Hey, it's Hugh Hewitt, and when I want to know what's going on with the Cavs, the Browns, and the Tribe, I tune into Sports Fix.
Sports Fix listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix.
Hey guys, J-Rocc here from the Sports Fix, and we always talking about using our platform to try to help the world and the society we live in, and everywhere I go and everywhere we go, bullying is one of the problems in today's society. There's nothing worse than any person, big or small, strong or weak, adult or child, feeling picked on, pushed around, vulnerable, and victimized at the hands of a bully. Change comes one person at a time, and my good friends at No Such Thing as a Bully are working on skills and techniques and ways that we can all change and make things better for everyone. Find out more at nosuchthingasabully.com.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Catch every UFC pay-per-view live in full HD at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
And away we go. Indeed, it is that time, baby. Time to get your fix. Welcome in. Let's get things rocking and rolling here. Welcome into the Sports Fix, you guys. J-Rocc with you here. We are live in the studio. It's a unseasonably beautiful Wednesday here in Northeast Ohio. As go ahead and tell me there's no such thing as climate change or global warming, whatever you want to call it. It is not supposed to be springtime in the middle of December. I'll take it. Definitely not going to complain about it, but don't tell me that something wonky hasn't happened with the atmosphere of our planet, that all of a sudden the seasons have just gotten a mind of their own. Again, very happy for it. As long as we get a little bit of snow, just a heads up right before Christmas, get the little, we need the white Christmas, but other than that, no need to get buck wild with it. So enjoying this here. It made it a lot of fun the last few weeks. Actually, I've been saying that as I do basketball season already underway. Last night, another great one. Elton Willoughby in a fantastic game on WINT, and I keep saying it's a beautiful night for basketball, and I feel bad because nobody wants to be indoors during it, but yet these gyms stay packed. As there's been a lot of excitement in the area, a lot of fun had all around, and except on Sundays. Although this past Sunday, hey, even the Browns contributed to that. It was a good week to be had all the way around. Going to temper that a bit. I know everybody's excited, and I was getting ready to dive into it later today. Kyrie Irving, a lot of rumors that he's coming back this Thursday or tomorrow, depending on when you're listening to the show. If you're listening live, it's tomorrow against the Thunder. But just a minute ago, literally, as the opening of this show was playing, Kyrie Irving tweeted out that that's not the case, and that he's slow your roll. He's not going to be returning. So maybe pulling it back a little bit to surprise people, but perhaps maybe everybody jumping the gun just a bit, as all of a sudden everybody got hot to the idea of Kyrie Irving being back against the Thunder here. And you know what? With Shump going out, which we'll get into again last night, hopefully nothing too serious there, but that's something to talk about here as we go forward. But it looks like no Kyrie just yet. Perhaps another game or two before that. But anyways, we're going to get into the Cavs. We're going to talk some Browns. We'll talk about that win, perhaps the last win of the season. I don't know if perhaps is even needed there, but we'll talk about the Browns as they win a battle of terrible football teams the other day against the San Francisco 49ers. We'll get Dan Wismar in on the conversation as well. Cannot wait to catch back up with Dan. He was live in the house for that one. We'll talk some Browns, Indians. Hey, you know what? The other day, by the way, I'll be fair. Even though this isn't going to, I know some people are going to say, hey, what are you even talking about? Indians haven't done anything. For the most part, I would agree with you. But you know what? Joey Butler, I didn't mind that pickup. I know it's nothing that's going to Katie bar the doors or anything like that, but I can dig it, and I actually think there may be a little bit of a diamond in the rough there, especially when you look at these statistics. Of course, you would have to be interested in another platoon situation, which, of course, is what the Indians are looking to do, but not that bad. But anyways, nothing that has blown people away, and I know there's going to be some comments about that. We'll talk to Dan Wismar about all of that and more. We'll open up the phone lines for you guys. It's been a minute since we've had some open phones, so I don't know about you, but I am ready to unlock and unload this edition of the Sports Fix. Let's do it, baby. Welcome in, my friends, to the aforementioned Sports Fix. I am your host, the Big Daddy on the microphone, J-Rocc, Jerry Myers. Call me what you will. Happy to be here, you guys, once again, doing the thing as we do every time we crack the mic across the Sports Fix Radio Network. Maybe you're listening live on the sportsfix.net, the website, the one-stop shop for all things Cleveland sports. Bookmark it if you haven't today. It's a great place. Plus, you'll notice now the new setup. It's got the TuneIn embedded player right there on the page. Listening to the show, some of you, many of you live right now. You can find the archives much easier, listen to past broadcasts and more. Bookmark thesportsfix.net while you can. Many of you listening live on TuneIn, TuneIn's radio app worldwide, on Spreaker, Mixler, their respective digital and mobile apps as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in live as you do. And of course, that's the best way to do it, like she says, to do it live. Always having a little fun here this morning. Hey, you know what? If I told you the story about why we weren't on the air Monday, you'd understand why I was feeling so good today, because we are indeed back on the... It was ridiculousness. That's all I'm going to say. Behind the scenes, there was some tomfoolery going on that was of none of my own doing. But anyways, I am glad to be rocking it out today. Welcome in as well, everybody listening live on Digital Delay. As always, thousands of you guys who listen around the world 24/7 in time zones, different time zones, area codes, all over the place, on sites like iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, on iTunes, on Stitcher Radio, and on so many other podcast formats, however you guys do it. Thank you so much once again for doing the thing, downloading it, feeding it, subscribing it, whatever it is, you get your fix, and I thank you guys for that. And you are the voice of the Sports Fix, so use it. As I said, it's been a week and a half or so since I've had a chance to crack open the phone line, so let's do just that as well. Phones are open for the opening segment until Dan Wismar joins us, which is T-minus about 20 minutes from now. 216-539-7535, the number to call. 216-539-7535. If you can't get through on the phones, or maybe like many of you, using your phone to listen to the show, then hit us up on social media. Always open there. Facebook, Twitter, email. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Twitter at The Sports Fix CLE. Email us. TheSportsFix@AOL.com. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Twitter at The Sports Fix CLE. Email us. TheSportsFix@AOL.com. See the phones ringing. I'm going to jump onto those here in just a minute. A couple of things I wanted to get into. As I mentioned, basketball season underway. Thanks to those of you that tuned in last night live on the airwaves of 1330 WINT. It was a fun game last night as Willoughby South, the host for my broadcast, and it's been an early season. I think I'm about 4 or 5 games into the season, and Charles Morgan hit me up last night and said, hey, I didn't even know you started basketball. It got rolling as soon as football ended, and I continue what I say with football season. Such a breath of fresh air being able to get out there and it's a different, you have to get away from the professional side. You have to get away from the money, from the gaga, from all the stuff that comes with it, good, bad, and ugly. And high school sports is a heck of a way to do that. Plus, every once in a while, I bump into some of you guys out there, and it's always a good time. So I think I'm back on the airwaves this Friday. I'll talk to you guys some more about that. I'm out at Eastlake North this Friday, I believe, for the latest game of the week on WINT. You guys can always find out what games are scheduled and whether I will be there going to WINTradio.com. Check out the schedule and upcoming list of games. Next week I'll be on the air. As a matter of fact, I'm on the air several times. I think I've got 4 or 5 games in the next week. I'm on Friday and Saturday this weekend. I've got right before Christmas, I've got games on the 22nd and the 23rd, the Holiday Hoops Tournament coming from Mentor. So should be a lot of fun, you guys, and a lot of opportunities to get out there and do some high school hoops. So if that's your thing, make sure you join me, and I'll continue to keep you guys apprised. Speaking of apprised, let's talk about keeping you apprised on a prize, as we've been doing the 12 Days of Christmas. That will continue today. We have another copy of Cleveland's Finest by my man Vince McKee, and that is going to one of you guys listening right now today to this broadcast. And you say, hey, J-Rocc Daddy, how do I win one for Christmas? All you have to do is tell somebody else to tune into the show right now. Go share the broadcast that you're listening to live or on digital delay, and just tag us. Tag me personally, J Jerry Myers, or tag the Sports Fix in your post, on your tweet, however you do it. Make sure you let me see it, and I will drop your name in the hopper. Jason Cato won a copy of Cleveland's Finest last week. I've got a copy of Let's Have Another going to my man Charles Morgan in the chat room. Happy, congratulations. Merry Christmas. I don't know what, I almost wished you a happy birthday, I guess. Merry Christmas, and I will get with you off the air, hook you up with a copy of Dan Coughlin's Let's Have Another, which, by the way, is available at bookstores everywhere, and it is awesome. And I've got another copy of that before the month is over, going to somebody, so sit tight, guys. But another copy today on deck, Cleveland's Finest by Vince McKee, an awesome collection of tales about Cleveland sports, past, present, history, all of that. Very well documented and put together, as everything is, by my man Vince McKee. So today, all you've got to do, share a copy of the show, and I'm going to hook you up with a copy of Cleveland's Finest. If you're the lucky winner drawn from the hopper, tell somebody else to tune in, and it's your shot to win today, and we're going to do it every episode here in December. So winner number 3 will be coming up. We'll announce that on Friday, and you will pick up a copy of Cleveland's Finest by my man Vince McKee as well. While I'm throwing out thank yous, thanks to everybody that came out this weekend. It was a full house this past weekend in Erie, and as you can tell by my voice, between wrestling this past weekend, broadcasting a couple of days in a row, my voice is absolutely chopped and screwed here today, and we're going to dig through it for sure, but thank you guys for coming out, and it was a heck of a way to end what a heck of a year. And I'll do this later. No need to get into it now. But you guys that follow every day know the journey and all of that to get back into pro wrestling, and everything that I've done this year has been nothing short of phenomenal and really a blessing in so many ways. And speaking of blessings, I mean, not to count any chickens before they're hatched, but there are some big things in the pipeline for yours truly, hopefully bearing some fruit in the first couple of months of 2016. And of course, as I know things, you'll know things, but we'll see. It's going to be an interesting ride as we click over the calendar into 2016. And I want to thank you guys for going along with it. Of course, especially many of you that listen to the Sports Fix, because between the expansion in my other broadcasting endeavors, between the re-expansion in my wrestling, that has definitely affected obviously we used to be 5 days a week, and now the Sports Fix is a 2-day-a-week venture most weeks, and it is the nature of the beast, unfortunately. But I just want to thank you guys as well for going along the ride with me. It's been a lot of fun, but brother, the fun has only just begun. Hey, all right, guys, let's get rolling with some Sports Fix fun. And actually, before you get too fun, I want to shift gears a little bit. And as the information came out today, and I know this is of interest to some of you out here that obviously Cavaliers longtime fans, information came out this morning. Funeral set for John Hot Rod Williams this Saturday will be the viewing and the funeral service for Hot Rod. And I wasn't on the air when the news came of Hot Rod Williams passing away. And this was one, we talk all the time, like when I joke with some of you guys that don't like the Browns about, why I am the way I am. Because, I can look at the era that I grew up in, and, it's a special group of guys. And, man, the Cavs, same thing. When I was a youngster, a young Big Daddy on the microphone, that was my Cavs squad. That was the team that I basically grew up on. Obviously in my early childhood, it was the early 80s guys. But when I finally started figuring out what was going on, knowing what I was watching, becoming a sports fan in my early years, that was my Cavs squad. And, come on, when you're a kid, who else has an attraction to a young child other than the cat with a name like Hot Rod? You know what I mean? Even though he was the sixth man and he wasn't, the star per se. First off, there really weren't stars. I guess now people list guys and they kind of put guys in order based on hindsight of how their career turned out. But if you lived through that time, at least to me, and again, you got to realize these are the eyes of a youngster. So obviously you may see it differently if you were an adult during this time. But to me, there was really no star of those Cavs. There's just a bunch of really good players. It wasn't like Brad Daugherty and the Cavs, or Mark Price and the Cavs. Not like, the Bulls were Michael Jordan and the Bulls, and then Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant got into the mix there. But I mean, it wasn't like that with the Cavs. The Cavs were just a deep squad. I mean, how many kids can go? I mean, as a kid, I knew all the players on the squad. I don't even know. Well, I mean, I do now, but I bet you my son couldn't tell you the 12th man on the Cavs roster right now. So it's a different time. But Hot Rod Williams, I mean, just had the cool nickname, which was attractive to a kid, and his style of play. I mean, and the guy always was smiling, always, every interview you saw with him, he just was a happy guy. You could see his attitude towards life, especially when you think of some of the things he overcame. And he always, one of the things that I thought was the coolest story about Hot Rod Williams, it had nothing to do with the basketball court. And I read this years later in breakdown. I can't remember what it was. It might have been the 25th anniversary of the Cavs. I don't know. May have been one of Joe Tate's endeavors. But anyways, talking about Hot Rod Williams and about how, he had been without and for his childhood, and how, the poor upbringing that he had. So when he cashed in his big contract, and hey, he was influential money-wise in the NBA. I mean, Hot Rod Williams broke the bank for players before the bank was broken, and really started to open up that well, which has led to what we see now, where the game really changed between the owners and the players. But getting back to my story, I remember hearing about how after he got paid, he literally he had a huge residence, and the basement was just a giant playroom for his kids. He just went and spent no limit, just everything you could think of, every toy, everything that a kid might want, a child might want, anything like that would make their life better, more fun, more entertaining, just loaded. It was like a Toys R Us in the basement. And it wasn't, some people might hear that and go, oh yeah, spoiled kids and athletes and spoiled brats, but it was the exact opposite. It was nothing like that. And I mean, it was straight from the reversal of how he had grown up, and it just spoke to the type of person that he was. He had it, and he wanted to share it, and he wanted to make sure that he, used what he had, because it was so bountiful. It was such a blessing to him, but he wanted to make sure that it was the exact opposite for his kids and for anybody. It wasn't just his family. He's a guy that there's nothing but generous stories out there that you don't hear. Even I've talked to people whose stories aren't on the air, who over the years had this interaction or that one that they don't even want publicized. Hot Rod Williams was one of the good guys, and it broke my heart when I heard that he was in the final stages. It came out just a few days before he passed. It was within 4 or 5 days, news had broke that he was in bad throes with pancreatic cancer. And then, they kick out there at 2, as we would say in the wrestling business. He fought for a minute and made a near comeback there. But a few days later, you get the news that Hot Rod Williams had indeed passed away, and at the tender age of 53, which, as I get into my mid-30s, you start to realize just how young 53 really is, especially, you look at it a little differently when you're younger. It's just a shame, and you hate to see that. And they say the good go young, and if that's the case, that is definitely what applies to Hot Rod Williams. Just a shame. But that was just one of the good guys, and a link to a really fun era of Cavs basketball. I mean, even now, the Cavs doing what they're doing. There's guys that like LeBron, guys that don't like LeBron, guys that don't like the modern NBA. Lots of different things. It wasn't like that. Those Cavs teams in the 80s, there wasn't drama. There was I guess, if you were like a savvy sports fan, I know Ron Harper had some issues that were a little bit of dirt in the closet. But I mean, other than that, there wasn't a ton of that with those guys. It was just a good, fun-loving squad that gave the fans their money's worth and played as a team, played basketball the right way. That's for sure. And even with all the success that the Cavs have had since, and going to the finals, and the whole LeBron James era, that is my favorite Cavs, as it is for my previous, my dad's generation, but the previous generation with the Miracle of Richfield, the 80s Cavs was it for me. If they had not come across Michael Jordan at the same time, he was at the peak of his powers, and unfortunately, we were the yin to Michael Jordan's yang, and it was the only reason, in my opinion, that those Cavs teams didn't win at least one championship along the way, because they could match up with anybody. And they were one of the better matchups for the Bulls, if you remember, during those times. They gave the Bulls fits at times, but at times Michael Jordan took care of business. Anyways, tragic stuff, sad to hear, and definitely prayers to the family of Hot Rod Williams, as he will indeed be missed. Guys, with that, you know what? Before I go any further, I'm going to go to the phone lines. I've kept them waiting here for just a minute, so let's jump onto the phones. Caller, you're up on the Sports Fix.
Yeah, good morning, J-Rocc.
Hey, good morning. What's happening? This is my man, Bruce. What's happening, baby?
Not much. A couple of things I was thinking about. Hot Rod was one of them.
Yeah.
Kyrie not coming back is kind of a little bit of a disappointment. I mean, people bought tickets expecting him to show up tomorrow night.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure the game was sold out before word of Kyrie playing or not anyway. That was the Thunder game. I know that a lot of people were already planning on going. But, I mean, have you seen, because I'm on the air now, and again, the last I saw was right before we went on, but am I correct? Did Kyrie confirm that he's indeed not going to play?
Right. He said, I will not return. I do not come back. I'll hear it directly, unless you hear it directly from me, was the tweet that I got. It's
starting to look perhaps like maybe that Christmas Day target may be more like it. They may want to wait a couple more days, a couple more games here even. We're here, the 16th of December, but everybody jumping the gun. I would much rather they wait as long as they need to wait, especially when you see what happened with Iman Shumpert. By the way, as we came on the air, I mentioned it. Shumpert goes out last night with a groin injury. He also will not play against the Thunder. The hope is that it's just a minor injury because he just came back. This is only his second game back since the shoulder injury, so you definitely want to see the Cavaliers err on the side of caution health-wise. Hey, that's the good thing, Bruce, with having some depth, is that there's not a lot of teams that could sit here and just kind of shrug their shoulders and go, that's okay. Let Kyrie wait a couple more games. You know, that's a high-level talent player you're talking about, but luckily the Cavs have been able to weather the storm pretty well, wouldn't you say?
I would say. Let me switch to the Tribe for just a second.
Yeah.
Anybody that wanted Todd Frazier, it's not going to happen.
Oh, yeah, because you know why? I'm seeing now everybody's – see, that's what happens with a guy like
he
Todd
just
Frazier.
Was traded in a three-team deal, including the Dodgers.
There you go. So now it's official. But I knew it wasn't going to happen the minute other big-money teams started jumping in. At that point, I said, okay, this may get too rich. The only chance I thought the Indians had at that point when you started hearing the Dodgers and a couple of the other teams that were talking was – if they were willing to go high enough on the prospect tree, then they may be able to make something happen. But I had a feeling that the Indians were the team that a deal like that starts with, and then it's used as the bait to try to hook a bigger fish perhaps in. I don't know, but I really wouldn't have minded Todd Frazier. That is for doggone sure. But I had a feeling that wasn't going to happen. And so there it is. It's now official, dealt to the Dodgers. I know a lot of people, and myself included, mocked a few of the early pickups of the Tribe. I will, in all fairness, say that I don't mind Joey Butler. I don't know what your thoughts are, Bruce, but he looks like a guy that has some potential, not just to be – he's probably in the thoughts of a platoon with Chisenhall this year, but he looks like a guy that could develop into a regular part of your deal. I don't know. What do you think? The kid looked like he has.
I don't know. I've never been a platoon guy. You know,
no,
I always
neither,
like just run a lineup out there every day, and that's what I go with. You know.
Oh, I'm not a fan of that either. You know, if it's a lefty and it's between noon and 4, we play this guy. If it's a righty between 6 and 8, we play this guy. You know, I'm not a big fan of that stuff either.
And, our stadium is, I don't know if
Empty?
you want to say catered, designed for left-handed hitters. You know, so we stack our lineup with left-handed hitters, and then everybody throws a left-hander at us, and before you know it, we're not, hitting anything. We're not scoring any runs.
Am I evil that when he started that sentence that said the stadium is, the first words out of my mouth were empty? I'm just saying. I'm being sarcastic. But
Yeah.
that goes along with that. By the way, the new scoreboard coming along, they're working on the process of that there, and it would sure help fill some seats and add some numbers to that scoreboard. And I do think that the Indians will. I mean, remember when they made the deal a couple of years ago, the 3-team deal? It came, about 2 or 3 weeks after the winter meetings went down. So just because the winter meetings
and we
are
also
over.
signed Swisher and Bourne, just before spring training. So
that's a forgotten part of Indians history. Why'd you have to go, man? This was a good day, Bruce. Now we're talking Cavs.
I'm just that guy. I'm just that negative guy. Like the Browns, had a win the other day, and the town went crazy. Like they had won the Super Bowl. I don't understand these people. 3 wins is not, exciting to me. I don't know.
Okay. I'm not saying this because here's the thing, and I don't want people to get too mad, and I'm going to get into this with Dan here in just a few moments, but when you bring up the Browns game the other day, and again, I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, because I am, in my heart, as big a Browns fan as anybody. When they're the Browns, they're supposed to be anybody, but I want nothing but the Browns to win. And I watched the game the other day, and it was maybe, I don't know, I drove home. I watched it with some people, and I drove back home. It was maybe about an hour or so after the game. And my son, we hadn't had a chance to talk during the game. He goes, "Hey, Dad, what'd you think of that Browns game?" And I had to think about it for a minute, and I realized that I didn't feel anything. Like, I go, man, I feel exactly the same as I did the last couple of weeks. I said, "Is that a bad thing?" And he's like, "I think I know what you mean, Dad." I said, "Yeah, like, I know that the Browns won, and they won big, but it was against such a bad team that played so awful."
Ohio State could have beat them.
They weren't just a bad team, though. They played awful. And I think this is something, and I know the Johnny Manziel fans are going to hate me for this right now, but everybody's looking at the numbers of what the Browns did against San Francisco. Look at the averages of what everybody does against San Francisco, and all of a sudden, the Browns' numbers don't look that impressive. You know what I'm saying? Actually, teams are throwing for over 300 yards a game against the 49ers on the season, and Manziel didn't even reach that mark. I'm not using that to, hey, we won. I'm not taking anything away from the kid. Don't start sending me your Manziel hate and love, all that stuff. I'm just saying they didn't even reach the averages that teams are scoring again or reaching against the 49ers. They won an ugly game against a bad team, but it was weird when I realized that it didn't, like, I said, yeah, the Browns won. At least it's better than losing. But it just, to me, I didn't take a whole lot out of it. Other than that, I was happy for the people that went down there, because I will say this, doggone it. And I know, Bruce, you don't like the fans of the Browns because they go no matter how bad the season are, but give them credit for that, because they were out there. There was a decent house there. I mean, how many fans are showing up for seasons this late, when it's awful like this? They made
they showed up because of Johnny, though. I mean, Johnny got the start. That's what they came to see.
I highly disagree with that. There was no late Russian tickets. I mean, that was tickets sold all season. I disagree with that. I'm just saying it was the same amount of people that was there, before. I disagree with that. But
no, I'm just saying that if Davis would have started, they wouldn't have showed.
Well, you may be right. I think that the reason that the crowd was big is because everybody knew that was the best chance to see the Browns win any games the remainder of the season. I think everybody pretty much knew that. You have got 3 playoff teams coming up in a row, 3 top 10 teams in a row, 2 top 10 defenses, 1 top 5, 1 top 8, and the Steelers' offense that is a buzzsaw. Yeah, the Browns definitely. And you know what? And I'll leave the Manziel talk with this, and I'm curious what Dan thinks when we come back from the other side of the break. But I don't care if the Browns I can't even say win with a straight face. But I don't care what the Browns do, win or loss, in these next 3 games. If Johnny Manziel and the Browns can even be competitive in these next couple games, then you can feel free to talk to me all winter long about bringing back Johnny and doing this and doing that, and let's carry this over to next season. But I'm willing to bet that any good feelings that come out of last week's game are gone and beaten into the ground by the time the next 3 weeks are over, because I'm pretty sure that, what's the old Denny Green line? They are who we thought they were. Well, I believe that Manziel is.
And you're only as good as your wins and losses. So.
And I got to be honest. I mean, you can say what you want about Manziel and the Crow and all of that. Crow had more yards against San Francisco than he's had against the rest of the NFL this season. He had a huge game. The offensive line had a huge game. Austin Pastor was blowing open holes. Look, he's the third string offensive guard on the Browns, and he was blowing open holes. Tell me what that tells you about the San Francisco 49ers. Enjoy the hell out of it, because I'll just be honest, I'd rather win 16 games a year against the crappy teams than have to deal with the nonsense that the Browns make us deal with. That being said, that's a very low bar, but it is what it is. Enjoy it, because I'm telling you, what you saw the 5, 6, 7 weeks prior, that's what you're going to see to end this thing. And I think that at the end of the season, San Francisco is going to be the lone bright spot on things. And by the way, I got a bone to pick with my buddies over there at the Plain Dealer. Your friends, Bruce. Did you notice? Look, I get it. Some people are ready for Mike Pettine to be fired. Some people want to blame Mike Pettine for Johnny Manziel's problems. They want to blame Mike Pettine for Justin Gilbert's problems. Yesterday, I saw my boys at the Plain Dealer wanting to blame Mike Pettine for Dwayne Bowe's problems as well. Apparently, if Dwayne Bowe...
That paper's about useless.
If Dwayne Bowe was playing for any other head coach, apparently he would have returned to his 5 years ago Pro Bowl status, because everybody forgets that last year Dwayne Bowe caught like 15 passes and 1 touchdown, but apparently his breakout season was denied because Mike Pettine is such an awful coach, and poor Dwayne Bowe can't figure out why he can't get in the game. Maybe Dwayne, it has to do with the fact that when you're in the game, you run the wrong routes, or you run slow, lazy routes, or you don't even get to the spot where the ball's going before the quarterback throws the ball and hits you in the back of the helmet. Maybe,
exactly,
just maybe, you suck and you just cashed in a $9 million friendship clause on your buddy Ray Farmer. You can blame a lot of things on Mike Pettine. You will not blame Mike Pettine for Justin Gilbert being a garbage cornerback. You cannot blame Mike Pettine for whatever problems Johnny Manziel has had, and you cannot blame Mike Pettine for Dwayne Bowe. That is a Ray Farmer deal, brother. But I didn't know if you saw that. I figured, hey, I got Bruce on the phone. Might as well talk about the Plain Dealer. Bruce, anything else before we go?
Yeah, the Drew Carey interview. Did you happen to catch any of that?
Yeah. You, for a second, I thought you were talking about the canceling of the Cleveland New Year's thing. I know Drew Carey was in the news for that yesterday. Where he's, you know what? Drew Carey's Mr. Cleveland.
You don't have to eat crappy burgers just because they're made in Cleveland. And quit wearing your Browns gear because it makes you look like an idiot.
He said you don't have to eat crappy sandwiches just because they're from Cleveland. If I wanted to eat a crappy sandwich, I could eat a crappy sandwich from anywhere. It doesn't have to come from Cleveland.
Exactly.
Yes.
He sounded exactly like me. I said, man, I tell you what, you can tell we're both from Cleveland,
All right, Bruce, my man. Good phone call. Happy holidays to you.
And to you and your family, too, and Dan Wismar and Charles and everybody else that we hang together.
Absolutely. Dan Wismar, as a matter of fact, is going to join us next. So, Bruce, my friend, you take care.
You too. And I will talk to you later, J-Rocc.
All right, that's my man Bruce from the Morewood. You guys see him on Facebook, logging in with our stuff all the time. Good friend of the show. We're going to take a break, get you a news break, and come back with the aforementioned Dan the Man Wismar here. Dan's going to join us, and we'll pick up our conversation. It will not be all hate, I promise. It will not. I'm just saying, the Browns had 9 sacks all season, so let's not let's not get crazy, because God knows the Browns sent me an email that pointed out all the fantastic things that they did against the 49ers. I don't get those emails anywhere near as quick during some of the previous weeks. But anyways, we'll talk about that. We'll see what you guys think. I'm curious. Dan was there in the house, what he thinks about the Browns win the other day and going forward. What are we going to see? The 12th man. I'll tell you what, I think Seattle could beat the Browns with 10 men. I don't even think they need 12, but we'll talk about that here with Dan. We'll talk some Cavs, some Indians, Hot Rod Williams, all of that. Let's chime in for the first time in a week and a half with Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland. He'll join us after the news next. Don't go anywhere. It's live. It's next on the Sports Fix.
So now I'm all in Nico basement, working on the phones. Either that or try the money mark to make the pickup. Man, it's 2008, I'm trying to paint the picture. Comeback season in the works and now I'm thinking bigger. I got 40 in the studio, every night, late night. Gotta watch it, don't wanna make them sicker. That's my nigga, oh Lord. Got a whole lot to show for it. I mean, we can really get it, we can go for it.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
When it comes to Cleveland sports, we go from
I can't touch this
to
I can't watch this.
So listen to The Fix. It's easier on the eyes.
Man, do I love card night. You ready, boys? You got a king?
Go, Fish Dad!
Oh, come on! This is WWE superstar Titus O'Neil. The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Learn more at 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Sports Fix listeners, do you tweet? So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE. Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. Real time spent making real decisions, creating real victory.
I'm the greatest man in the world!
And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize. I mean, a really real prize. Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs.
The trophy's 12 feet high, and it is glorious!
Football, baseball, hoops, you name it, they have it. Plus, they have awesome draft kits and party supplies to make all your preseason activities the envy of everyone. If your league needs a ring, belt, or trophy, or you want to upgrade what you already have, there's literally only one place to go. If you're going to be a fantasy jock, do it right.
It's mine, the most magnificent belt ever created, and it's mine.
With America's Fantasy Sports Superstore, fantasyjocks.com. Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit fantasyjocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more.
News break.
I'm Christine Lisi. Right now, the Bengals' push toward the playoffs won't likely include quarterback Andy Dalton. He was told he broke his thumb in the loss to the Steelers, and team sources tell ESPN's Bob Holtzman it's probably a season-ending injury, with the best-case scenario that Dalton returns for the playoffs. He will see a hand specialist today. Coach Marvin Lewis said Dalton's out next Sunday, but he wouldn't go any further than that. Cincinnati tight end Tyler Eifert is under the league's concussion protocol after taking a hard hit to the head yesterday. Seahawks running back Thomas Rawls will miss the rest of the season with a broken ankle. Strong safety Cam Chancellor left yesterday's game with a bruised tailbone. He could return for Sunday's matchup against the Browns. Texans quarterback Brian Hoyer being evaluated for a concussion. He was sacked 5 times by the Patriots. Hoyer suffered 2 concussions in his NFL career, his rookie year as well as one last month. Colts quarterback Matt Hasselbeck injured his ribs in the loss to the Jags. Team says it'll know more about the injury today. Indianapolis and Houston are tied atop the AFC South with identical 6-7 records.
The ESPN Fan Shop, powered by Dick's Sporting Goods, is your one-stop shop for all things NFL this holiday season. From jerseys to home decor, Dick's Sporting Goods has everything you need for the NFL fan on your holiday shopping list. Every season starts at Dick's.
Now, back to the Sports Fix. Your choice for intelligent talk.
Almost that time, guys. Christmas just around the corner. Welcome back into the Sports Fix. J-Rocc back with you. And man, sat here in the break and I said, boy, I feel sorry for subjecting everybody to my voice. I sat here and recovered, intravenously putting the fluids through. No, I had to get my voice back together. I just want to apologize for everybody out there. It is it's been no rest for the wicked between wrestling, broadcasting, games 2-3 days a week, doing the show a couple times. There's just been no chance for my voice to rest. I don't know that I've talked ever less in the off time that I've had, trying to recover as much as I can, staying off the phone, staying off of meandering conversations, but to no avail. Hopefully that'll get itself together. Gargling lemon juice, pulling out all the tricks out of the book. Thank you guys for your patience there as well. Waiting for Dan Wismar to join us here in just a moment. You guys can keep the conversation rolling on as we get back into the Sports Fix on Facebook, on Twitter, email, facebook.com/The Sports Fix, Twitter @The Sports Fix, CLE, email us, The Sports Fix @AOL.com, facebook.com/The Sports Fix, Twitter @The Sports Fix, CLE, email The Sports Fix @AOL.com as we get back. And there we go. Let's not do that, really. There we go. Let's kill the music in the background here. And as we wait for Dan to join us, real quick, before I think back to the end of the break, I'm definitely not... I don't know how else to qualify it besides saying how much I want the Browns not to suck. I mean, I can't qualify it any better than saying that. And part of me feels awful for feeling the way that I do. And I know I'm not the only one, because I've had so many of you guys come to... It's like there's a delineating line in the sand between the two different sides, the two different, I guess, types of Browns fans. I mean... There's people like me that just came out of the game the other day and said, I mean, you look at it in the perspective of what it is, but man, there's cats that hit me up and said, this is... And I enjoy the art of conversation as we talk about. I had somebody wanting to discuss the game with Seattle with me this week. Said, boy, the Browns' offensive line controlling things like they did the other day. And I'm like, they're not capable. And this is just me, but I know I'm not the only one. The Browns' offensive line is not capable of doing what they did the other day on a regular basis, not as an incomplete unit, not being coached improperly. You know, by the way, I mentioned Kyle Shanahan and his departure from last season. I think really, and I've been lax in mentioning this as well, but Andy Moeller, he was suspended. Remember, he had the domestic incident right at the beginning of the season. That's the offensive line coach. Even if somebody else is able to step in, next man up, all that stuff that we talk about, that's still That's your offensive line coach. That's the guy who had the main idea, the main whatever. It was his deal that he was putting together there. So that affects the line as well. But, if you think the Crows going to run for 250 yards against any of these teams that are left, or in general, it's not that the Browns have been unable to. I mean, think about it. It's not like they have not handed the ball off to the running backs, because that's something that I got into a bit of a heated discussion with some guys about after the Browns game. See, this is why Mike Pettine's a horrible coach, is what I was told, because look at what happens when he hands the ball off. Was I the only one watching the other games of the season? Because I know for a fact that the Browns attempted many a handoff throughout this season. And I also know for a fact that on 80% of those said handoffs, Crow ran into his own offensive lineman, ran into the hole that doesn't exist in the offensive line, and ran for a yard if he was lucky, or negative yardage, or no gain. We saw that a lot. I call it running the Trent Richardson route, and that's what he was doing for much of the season. Hey, I like the Crow. Don't get me wrong. I love Duke Johnson, too. I think that we got some good potential in those two running backs there. I think there's got to be some work on them, but I think there's some real potential there. I like Duke Johnson a lot. But anyways, it's not like these Browns have not attempted handoffs all season long. Now, granted, they fell behind big in games, and then they ditched the pass, or ditched the run and went to the pass. And I was reading Terry Pluto the other day. He had a great point, and this was one that Dan and I went to a lot last year, which is Kyle Shanahan. Do you guys remember one of the things that we talked about all season long with Kyle Shanahan last year was even when the Browns were down double digits, he kept running the ball. When the Browns were down in the fourth quarter, he kept running the ball. He kept a very well-balanced attack, and that's one of the reasons that the Browns' offense was surprisingly effective for 2/3 of last season before the wheels fell off at the end. They don't do that this year. Flip goes away right away from that plan and goes to pass, as we've seen. By the way, that's John DeFilippo, who doesn't run the ball as much as he should during these games. It's Chris Tabor, who special teams has given up how many blocked kicks? 3 of them in the last couple of games. How many returns for touchdowns? A couple of them here in the last couple of games. Yet, when people talked about firing Mike Pettine mid-season, those two were the geniuses that they wanted to replace Mike Pettine with. Trust me, of those 3 coaches, Mike Pettine's doing the best of the 3 of them, because Chris Tabor should have been fired a couple of weeks ago on the field. I know you don't do that. I'm being sarcastic, but he's awful. Another kick blocked. And I will say this, that blocked kick the other day had nothing to do with the coach. It's because now Coons has it in his mind that his kicks are getting blocked, and now he's kicking low, and that's a problem that comes with rookies once they get there. Once they get in the head, once they get the mentality, that's a problem, and he may not be able to kick out of that. Some guys don't. It's like when you hear about a fighter who goes undefeated for 10, 12, 15, 20 straight fights. He thinks he's unstoppable until the first time he gets dropped, and then he never wins a fight again, because once that aura of invulnerability is gone, they get back down to reality, and their skills take back and regress to the level that they were at before that momentum got rolling. But anyway, I think that's what that was. But getting back to I'm just saying, guys, I see comments coming in. Guys wanted Mike Pettine replaced with those 2 guys. But getting back to the running game, it's not like they didn't try. It wasn't working. Why? Because teams could stop the run, because they weren't as horrible as the San Francisco 49ers. It's not like this offensive line woke up and said, we're going to blow holes through people today, and they did. They woke up and said that every Sunday this season. My point is you have to look at it realistically. If you want to enjoy it, because they stink, and they have given you only 3 wins all season long. So from that matter, hell yeah, take the victory and say, all right, because it is most likely the last one of the season, unless you hold out hope that they're going to upset Pittsburgh, because if there's not a chance that they beat the Seahawks or the Chiefs in these next 2 games. That's just being as real as it gets. But, look at what the Browns did was at or below the average of what every team has done. Everybody wants to fire Mike Pettine because his defense is 27th in the league, correct? The San Francisco 49ers are 28th. everything that the Browns do defensively, San Francisco does it slightly worse. So keep that in mind, because I've called this Browns defense one of the worst that I've seen since they came back. Many people have talked about the horrific level of this Browns defense. San Francisco is slightly worse. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And I will now use that to give credit to Johnny Manziel, because this time last year, Johnny Manziel couldn't throw for this against a bad team. So that's growth. That's progress, and that's now what you take forward into the next 3 games. Because I can promise you this. Last year, he doesn't go 21 for 31 for 270 yards on an empty field, let alone against a football team. So growth was made there. You saw the stupid interception. You saw the stupid immaturity. And I can't believe that people will argue with me and say, hey, I'm glad to see the kid beating his head with his laptop on the side. I have never seen any other professional. I've seen idiots, but I've never seen a professional quarterback bash his own head with his laptop like he's a angered frat boy on the set of Animal House. That's all I'm saying. I've watched Aaron Rodgers throw it down. I've seen guys get pissed and throw it to the side. But let's not act like we're an angered frat boy who's mad that they just took away our commissary rights for 2 weeks. I don't know what you get mad at in college. Mad that they closed down the frat party early. I don't know. But that was stupid. That stuff has to go. And that stuff means more than you think. But anyway, somebody's going to say I'm hating on Johnny now, so I want to pull away from that. There will be plenty of time for everybody to return to this conversation in about 3 weeks. And so, but again, I'm just trying to explain why I feel the way I do about the Browns' victory as it was the other day. And it's why when I came out of the game, and again, it was about an hour later that I came to the realization of how I felt. Like, I didn't feel anything. Like, man, to me, and maybe this is just because I'm trying to keep it real, I didn't feel any different or any better after that game than I did after the ones that we lost the weeks before, except that we didn't lose. I was like, well, hell, I guess there's a silver lining there. It did not impress me because there was, I'll tell you what, to be honest with you, San Francisco looked like the effort that they gave in the first half, they gave less of it in the second. It's almost like San Francisco said, man, we're not trying that hard, and it's not working, and they're still not really ahead. It was a 10-3 game at halftime. So they came out and tried even less in the second half, and the Browns were able to take advantage of that. Blaine Gabbert, 18 of 28, $194. The Browns defense sacked him 9 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's one of the best defensive performances the Browns have had in franchise history. As a matter of fact, since the Browns have kept track of since the NFL has kept track of stats, of the sack stat, which is only since the beginning of the 80s, their second best game that the Browns have had in their entire history since that stat has been kept. So there's that. I told you the Browns love to send me these things. On days where the Browns stink, I'll get these emails late in the evening. I got this one an hour after the game was complete. Browns rushed for a season-high 230, the most since 2010. They had 9 sacks, which is the most for any NFL team in a game this season, and the second most in Browns history. The only other game where the Browns had more sacks was against Atlanta in 1984, when I think Schottenheimer may have been the defensive coordinator at that time for the Browns. But either way, that's the last time that they sniffed that territory, and stats became an official statistic, or sacks became an official statistic in 1982, for anybody that wants to yell at me and say that there were other bigger performances. You know, the Crow had a $145, career high for him. He had a 54-yard run and another long run. Think about that. He hasn't had 54-yard games this season. It's the best game since Peyton Hillis, $184 back in 2010. 2010, and it's the first time anybody's had 100 yards since the beginning of last season. Ben Tate. Remember Ben Tate? He was last year's Dwayne Bowe. He had 124 yards against the Titans last year. And by the way, Crow's 54-yard run was the longest since, this is sad, but so is everything the Browns have done since 99. Reggie Hodges had a 68-yard fake punt run for a touchdown back in October of, I don't even have the year here, but if I remember right off the top of my head, that was in 2011, I believe. I believe that was the end of the Mangini era. Either way, remember they pulled out the trick punt. They pulled out all the tricks to beat New Orleans that day. I think they had a flea flicker, a fake punt, maybe even a fake field goal, went forward on fourth down a half a dozen times. They pulled everything out to get the win against the Saints that day. But how sad is it for your franchise that the longest punt for years, the last half a decade, was by your punter until Crow the other day. So that's what I'm saying. It's like when we look at the Browns roster and I say the reason that they can't sustain anything is because they're a team full of exceptions to the rule. I think that good teams have exceptions at every position. Guys that are too small but have heart. Guys that are under speed, under talented when it comes to speed, but they got power. There's always a guy that can work past his deficiencies physically. What the Browns have is a team full of those guys, and they're great stories. Seriously, I'm even talking to guys like Bruce that hate the concept of what the Browns have become, but get that out of this conversation and just looking at the talent on the field. It's not like they have guys that don't try hard. I mean, one of the biggest problems is the talent deficiency. When you look at the fact that there are so many exceptions to the rule and not enough. That's why it's called the rule. That's why you want to have the big wide receiver. It's why you want to have certain skill sets at certain positions. And then when you get that crazy little wide receiver that comes in and people go, man, can you believe? Look at what Danny Amendola's doing. Look at what this guy's doing. Look at what that guy's doing. Look at Eric Metcalf in the slot. You get those exceptions that are able to do very special things. Those are exceptions to the rule. And as long as you have a few of them, it works out in your favor. I think the Browns just have a team full of them, and we see that all the time. And the same thing here when you look at a victory. And it's full of season bests and long-time franchise bests. That's a sign to really bottle up and enjoy what you saw because there's a blip in the radar. So that is where I'm coming from. All these things you can be happy about because you suffered through 7 straight losses, and some of them were very ugly. But that's the only point, I had people throwing me messages during the Browns game. Hey, I bet you ain't hating on Manziel now. Oh, looks like the Browns had their quarterback all along. Looks like your stupid coach has been holding him back. I told you. And I'm like, San Francisco gives up over 300 yards passing every week against any quarterback who takes the field. Manziel had 270. He played slightly below average for what the rest of the league is doing. Good enough against San Francisco. Do I have to finish once I finish it with against San Francisco? No. That's all. I mean, so you can look at it how you want, but if we're measuring what can Johnny Manziel do in the future, you have now proven that he can beat bad teams, and if that's the bar that we're setting, that's fine. But I don't believe that bar is high enough to jump with the hurdle of everything else baggage-wise that this kid brings to the table. And again, think it's going to regress much more to the mean here as it goes down. Plus, the weapons go down as well. Brian Hartline, this is kind of a Brownsy injury here. I hate to use that term. Having the best season he's had in how long? His last few weeks, he's really been the best wide receiver the Browns have had consistently. 5, 6, 7, 8 catches a week. He's increased his yardage each and every week. He's been one of the true weapons offensively for the Browns. He is toast. Injured the other day, season-ending injury, needs surgery, and had his highest game of the season. Broke 100 yards receiving and was looking good. Brian Hartline fought through a lot of injuries this year. He's one that I will put in the plus side. When we're looking at Ray Farmer, and we're talking about what he did right and wrong, that's one of the few that Ray Farmer gets right. Check mark. You get that one right. Now, let's not go over to the other side. And I mentioned the article earlier when I was on the phone with Bruce, which, by the way, heard from Dan Wismar here a little bit, and unfortunately something has caused him to not be able to be with us. We'll see if we're able to correct that here in the next few. If not, then maybe we will do our best to get Dan on with us on Friday. I'm working on that as I talk to you guys here, but welcome in, by the way. Hours clicking over. Sports Fix, hour number 2. If you're just joining us, J-Rocc here with you. We're talking about the Browns, talking about the game the other day against the San Francisco 49ers, talking about exceptions to the rules and all of that. And with Manziel, I regress back to speaking about him. When you see the way the performance goes, I mean, you have to determine at this point whether you feel developing is going to go forward, and you've got no heart line. That's where I was going. Dwayne Bowe. I referenced the article earlier where it was basically insinuated by Dwayne Bowe that the coaching staff is holding him back, and I dare any Browns fan that is not completely just making things. If you want to be contrary to me, then you can probably argue with me in favor of Dwayne Bowe and say it's Mike Pettine's fault, but I think you would only be doing it to be intentionally contrary is the term I would use, because there's no way. This is not a Browns problem. This is not a Mike Pettine problem. It's a Dwayne Bowe problem, as in the gig is up. The jig is up, and I was one of the guys excited. Not excited. I don't want to use that term. I didn't go, yeah, Dwayne Bowe, but I did say, hey, you know what? This guy could be the big guy. And if he even, I didn't think he was ever going to jump, into what he was before. But I said, hell, if this guy can just be half of what he thinks he can be, you know what I mean? Then I'll take that, because he thought he was going to come back and do all that he did before, but he couldn't even do that. He could not even bring that to the table. He is lazy. He's running bad routes. He doesn't know the playbook. He had a problem. Now, if you want to say that his problem was with the coaching staff in training camp, I can buy that. I can get with that, because the coaching staff was not happy with his effort and with his injuries every single day in training camp. So, yeah, you know what? Maybe you got a personality conflict, and maybe Dwayne Bowe decided to pack it in for the season. If that's the case, that's still Dwayne Bowe's fault. That is not Mike Pettine's fault, and I just find it funny, whether it's Manziel, Bowe, whether it's Justin Gilbert, whatever, how all of the heat from people that want Mike Pettine gone falls on Mike Pettine. Yet Mike Pettine is the only person. Think about what I'm about to say. If you like the Browns or if you hate the Browns, when you talk about what's wrong with the Browns, everybody says you got to have somebody who is he's consistent, he's disciplined, he's going to do it his way. He's not going to let guys tell him what to do and how to do it and all. You want that type of leader for your team. The only person in this entire freaking organization that has shown that has shown that he is willing to set expectations, that he's willing to set rules, and that he is willing to play the guys that he feels are following those expectations. And that's the guy that's wrong. That's the guy that's wrong somehow. The guys that will let the inmates run the asylum are right. But then as soon as you dump ship, you'll say that the Browns let the inmates run the asylum and we're starting all over again. I'm just saying, from the outside looking in, to me, the only guy who is actually attempting to keep this ship going in the right direction is Mike Pettine. And that's the guy that the Manziel honks want out of town, because he's the reason that their quarterback isn't what they thought he was. He's the reason for this, that, and the other thing. You know what I say? I say Mike Pettine was the reason that the Browns started off last season the way that they did. And I say that the tomfoolery that has been surrounding this organization for the last 2.5 seasons is the problem all the way around. I'm very interested to see. I think that what happens in the first few days after this off season will be very, very telling, because I don't care who likes or doesn't like what I'm about to say. In my opinion, if the Browns part ways with Mike Pettine at the end of this season, it will speak volumes to me about the way Jimmy Haslam is going to approach this thing, because I'm willing to bet that Jimmy Haslam, if he's talking to football people, not talking to fans, not listening to media, not listening to sports talk, which he's not doing, if he's talking to football people, they're saying something similar to what I'm saying about Mike Pettine, about the Johnny Manziel situation, about the way he handled it. A coach on the hot seat in most places would have let Johnny Manziel run muck over him, run roughshod over the organization. Why? Because you need to let whatever you barely have any talent. If you think this kid is your talent, then you got to throw him out there because he's going to save your ass and save your job. You know what I'm saying? Any other bad franchise would have let a kid like Johnny Manziel run amok because they would have felt no choice, because the coach would have been desperate. At no point, to me, has Mike Pettine coached desperate. Now, yes, his defense has sucked. His defense has been awful, and he's a defensive guy. Yeah, that has to be fixed. Clearly, if I keep Mike Pettine, it's with the expectation that gets fixed. But the act of releasing him just to do it, because I'm pissed, because I want a clean house, to me is a function of stupidity that will continue to keep this organization stupid. It will. And there's guys right now sending me messages on Facebook saying, hey, J-Rocc, I disagree. Just because you want to have stability doesn't mean you keep somebody that you already know sucks at his job. I don't know how you can make that determination, because I've seen the opposite. I understand that they are what the record is. But look at the word I keep using is tomfoolery. Look at the ridiculousness that is circling around. Who is the only person each and every week speaks to the media, has to deal with the media, has to answer questions? Mike Pettine has to answer questions for the coach, for the general manager, and for the owner. Mike Pettine takes all of the bullets. He has to deal with all of the Johnny Manziel garbage. He has to deal with the fact that his general manager has mangled one of the best draft opportunities of recent history in 2 years. Mangled them. And then, okay, there you go. And people want to focus to me on the fact that he needs to get better at clock management, because that's not a learnable skill, right? That's not something that you learn on. To me, that's like if I find a guy at a radio station that can produce great spots, always shows up on time, does this, does that, does this. He's got a weakness here. He's not that good at doing whatever. I don't want to get into radio technicalities or whatever. He doesn't run a tight board, or he needs to screen phone calls better. Well, guess what? I'm not cutting off my nose to spite my face. I'm going to find a way to make sure that he learns the skills that he needs to learn, because the rest of what he's got is exactly what I'm looking for. If you're going to let the guy go because you say that he can't hire a quality control guy to keep an eye on the time on the clock, then you're asking for the Browns to stay in this perpetual stupid state that they've been in. Perpetually stupid. I watch coaches make much worse decisions week to week. And I'd be willing to bet that if Mike Pettine could just focus on the job that he actually gets paid to do instead of 17 other jobs that are thrown at him as well, I think Mike Pettine perhaps would make a better representation for himself. Because until this organization got stupid halfway through last season, he was doing a good job of weathering the storm. And again, let me stop for a second. You want to throw all of your Mike Pettine problems at me. And look, if the Browns fire Mike Pettine tomorrow, I can't do a damn thing about it. We'll hire a new coach and we'll move on, because that's the way it goes. I have no skin in the game except for the fact that I want the Browns to be good. Just like anybody else that is a Browns fan. They want the Browns to turn things around. I want it for you guys, for everybody listening, for any Browns fan out there that suffered through this garbage. I want my kids to be able to grow up and have something to be proud of. I want Cleveland to have something to be proud of. Look at, since Mike Pettine was hired, which, by the way, Mike Pettine was hired by a guy who was fired 2 weeks later. So Mike Pettine begins with a relationship with a guy that he has no relationship with, who comes in as his general manager. Mike Pettine was hired with one entirely different organizational view that was in lockstep with Joe Banner. Whatever you think of Joe Banner, Mike Pettine's plan fit Joe Banner's vision for the next few years of the team. Quickly, Joe Banner's gone. Ray Farmer is now the general manager, who has an entirely different vision of what he wants. Apparently, no matter how many press conferences those guys have, no matter how many pressers they have that tell you same vision, same all of that stuff, it's obviously not true because there was some differences in opinions here somewhere, and you can see that as this rift has slowly gone. And it began at last year's draft. You look at the Johnny Manziel thing. We don't need to rehash that. We don't need to rebeat that dead horse. That was not a coach's decision. I don't even think it was a general manager decision. I think it came straight from the top. I think that Alex Shiner, spent those years down in Dallas. He saw the Johnny Manziel. And think about that. Texas, the high school, it's all big, college. The Manziel legend grew right under Alex Shiner's nose. So he was even more susceptible to the carny about Johnny Manziel than the average guy. So now you've got a business executive who's got the ear of the owner, and all he's doing is selling Johnny Manziel and the jerseys and the tickets and the money that Johnny Manziel can sell. This is a business department's wet dream, is drafting Johnny Manziel. And you hear the stories about the homeless guy and the change at the last minute where one name is written down and then Jimmy Haslam sends a new name down. Whatever stories you choose to believe, there's literally urban legends, fairy tales, fables that came out of the drafting of one Johnny Manziel. And then you look at the remainder of that draft and the which we now see really busted draft picks here for the most part, with a couple of exceptions. Here we go again with exceptions to the rule. And the rule is when you draft them in the first and second and third rounds, they should be instant contributors, starters, and Pro Bowl type players. We go for the exception to the rule. We find a few good players in the undrafted section, maybe one or two late round picks, can't get the early ones right. But anyways, so now the perfect storm has come. And think about last season, how different last season goes without the drafting of Johnny Manziel, because up until that point, the Browns had this story set in place. You had Brian Hoyer, who had been injured the year before and had really excited the fan base, and he was coming back, and there was question of could he come back? Would he come back? There was a built-in story there at the quarterback position. All of a sudden, like sabotage, except self-sabotage is what it felt like, because here comes different agendas. Joe Banner, Mike Pettine, they were dead ahead on the Brian Hoyer has a shot to be the quarterback of this team, and we're going to give him the next 2 years to prove that. That went completely adjacent to what Ray Farmer wanted to do with his group of guys as he came in. Boom, here comes Johnny Manziel. Instantly, training camp, the Browns couldn't, they didn't run from the circus. They created the circus. They dissed local media, kissed ass of every national person out there, all the ESPN people. They thought, boy, we're the cat's meow now. We're going to give a lottery for the rare open seats at training camp. And boy, look at these numbers. We can't keep people away. Boy, well, look at these jersey numbers. Look at these ticket sales. Oh, this kid's the future. Meanwhile, from the very first time he stepped on the football field, the football guy, the head coach, and his offensive coordinator, Kyle Shanahan, sat there and looked at each other and said, "You've got to be freaking kidding me." I was there, guys. Many of you were there too. They set records at training camp. I was there every day of training camp of Johnny Manziel's rookie season up until the season prep began. And I will tell you that he was the worst of the quarterbacks that were there. They had very, very slick ways of trying to show him off the couple of things he did well to get some oohs and ahs from the crowd. But he was awful. And his preparation, as we know, you know the stories now about how awful it was, but what you guys didn't know was at the time what was going on. You didn't find that out until after the season. Then everybody found out what was going on. Mike Pettine's now got all this going on. He's got the front office trying to force him to make the quarterback change at the beginning of the season. He's now got internal pressures against his own coaching staff. He has hey, general manager suspended. Why? Because for the beginning of the season, he's texting coaches, he's texting executives, he's texting other people in the organization. He's questioning why Johnny Manziel's not playing. Why are my draft picks not playing? Why won't Mike Pettine play Justin Gilbert? Maybe because these guys suck. But anyways, so how often, by the way, do teams have their general manager suspended? I'm just curious. Does that happen? That happens all the time, right? That happens all the time. Teams have their general manager suspended for undermining his own coaching staff. That happens in every organization, right? That just happened in New England a couple weeks ago, didn't it? No? You tell me no? Huh. I'm shocked. So all of this is going on. Meanwhile, here's the biggest surprise. Brian Hoyer's not pressed by any of this crap. He says, I ain't worried about it. He got one look at Johnny Manziel and said, I can beat this kid out in my sleep. And he did just that. So for all you people that want to tell me how horrible Brian Hoyer is, he beat your boy. You want to tell me how horrible Josh McCown is? He beat your boy. You want to tell me how horrible Connor Shaw is? He beat out your boy, too. I'm just saying, guys, the coaching staff, the guys who get paid and whose job status depends on winning and losing football games, gave that decision. That wasn't a fan. That was definitely not a fan's decision. That wasn't a poll, because the fans would have voted 90% to put Manziel in based on the hype. It sure as hell wasn't a media decision. The media to this day is still holding a grudge against the Browns for making them not be able to cover Johnny Manziel, in my opinion, because they were just so hyped up and riding that train in. So all of this is going on. Meanwhile, the Browns are winning football games. The Browns are taking the little offense that couldn't. They got wide receivers nobody wanted, little tiny guys. Ben Tate's a bust at running back. You got a couple of rookies here in undrafted Crow and T. West. And Kyle Shanahan's offense is rolling. Brian Hoyer, this garbage quarterback, is rolling. And again, they had struggles. But in general, the Browns were well overachieving at that point, and it became not just a 1 or 2 game blip, it became an 11-game run there, even through the loss of your starting center. Yes, things got hurt because the running game was affected, but the Browns still sat at 7-4, 11 games through that thing. There's no, you want to say it's a win and loss league? Well, I will go back to right there. And at that point, remember, that was when the media pressure went to an all-time level. There were secret meetings in the hallways, and then all of a sudden executives demanding that Manziel plays, and the pressure's building. And then, don't forget, hey, guess who came back at this time? Josh Gordon comes back into the mix, and he hasn't played for a year, but he's going to come out here, except Josh Gordon thinks Johnny Manziel should be the quarterback of the Browns, because why wouldn't we allow the guy who's been suspended and has all of these issues, why shouldn't we let him come in and have some control over the organization too? So he came in right away, made it known that he thought Manziel was the better quarterback. Coincidentally, all of a sudden, of the 8 interceptions that Brian Hoyer threw from the return of Josh Gordon through the end of the Brian Hoyer era, 7 of them were in the direction of Josh Gordon. You tell me that there's no coincidence there. There were issues with running the routes. There were issues that, in my opinion, was because certain players wanted the other quarterback on the field. And when I say certain players, I mean Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon wanted Johnny Manziel on the field, and when he got him, it didn't work out so well for Josh Gordon either, for any of them, because then that's, to me, the ultimate vindication of Mike Pettine is what happened when they finally put Johnny Manziel on the field. And this is not to say he has not improved. Guys, he has. I will give him credit. He has improved. Jesus, if you couldn't improve from where he was last year, we got issues. But look at that. That vindicates everything that Mike Pettine did and proved that he was right and everybody else was wrong with their outside judgment. Yet somehow, surviving that tail end of the season, the Browns couldn't step over their own self fast enough getting back into another season. They literally threw themselves into it looked like, hey, we're going to get out of the Johnny Manziel business. We're going to slow this train down. He's going to go to rehab. Go back and pull up conversations from last January and February and I remember saying exactly how the offseason was going to go for Johnny Manziel and the Browns. I said there's going to be a rehab. There's going to be a dark period where there's no communication. Then there's going to be the stories about how he's a changed man, and then there's going to be and it'll be the Browns. The Browns had this whole plan so that he would still. The Browns' intention was for Johnny Manziel to be the starting quarterback again this season. Don't let them tell you otherwise. That did not work out the way they planned. He did make some progress, but not enough to step up, and that's why Josh McCown became the quarterback again. Now, meanwhile, here's a second consecutive draft going on that has been busted. Oh, by the way, the offensive coordinator who helped Mike Pettine run that offense that was running pretty well for most of last season somehow did the unprecedented, I don't know that I've ever heard of many things like this, where a guy in year one of a 4-year contract as the offensive coordinator of a football team was able to sit down and somehow he had enough leverage over his organization to, I like to say, blackmail his way out, but to negotiate his way out of this thing and get out and go to another team. He didn't even have to sit out. He was given free reign to go be Atlanta's offensive coordinator. Now, the people that think that I'm wrong will say, well, look, they let him go. Obviously, they didn't mind letting him go. And I say that's the problem. But the fact that he was able to get out, I'm telling you for a fact, 3 years left on my contract, Atlanta's giving me a top draft pick if they want my coach. Even if I don't want Kyle Shanahan, for simple business purposes, I'm making you compensate me for the loss of my employee, but not the Browns. The Browns just let the guy walk. Why? Not because they wanted to, because they had to, because the cat had something over them. Clearly, he brought in a 42-point PowerPoint presentation and explained exactly why the Browns should let him leave. That's unprecedented, fellas. That doesn't happen everywhere. And these are not things that were happening just because it's the Cleveland Browns. Now, I want you to take Bill Belichick and replace Mike Pettine with Bill Belichick and tell me how one of the greatest coaches in the NFL deals with all of these things that I mentioned. And hey, guess what? We've only covered about 12 calendar months. We haven't even dove into what's happened in the last 5 or 6 months. Bill Belichick, you know what he would do? Quit. He wouldn't. Well, that's the difference, is he wouldn't deal with this. Any coach that didn't have to wouldn't. That's the price that Mike Pettine pays for being a coach that is in his first opportunity. But seriously, for anybody that explanation that I just gave, I mean, tell me that doesn't really sum it up. When you look at it all in order, when you start to stack everything, it's like you have to see things sometimes. If you see them one thing at a time, they don't look like they should. When you look at the whole pile together, you go, holy crap. Tell me that Mike Pettine hasn't done a better job than maybe some people have given him credit for, because I will argue with you that there are not many coaches, if any, that would have been able to deal with the same set of circumstances while at the same time being given talent that can't do what it's supposed to do. Dwayne Bowe, Ben Tate, you need to go on and on through the list. And those are the top two. Last year it was Ben Tate. He was going to do things, and I was excited about it. He was going to do things at the running back position. This year it was Dwayne Bowe. They got Brian Hartline right. They got Josh McCown right. Josh McCown, I'll tell you what, saved the day for the Browns at the quarterback position here this season. And now there's some guys going, I disagree. And I will say this, quarterback play hasn't been the problem for the Browns this year. So Josh McCown way surpassed my expectations for what he's done and has earned my credit as one of the toughest doggone quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life. But, so they hit right on that. And I did mock the signing of Josh McCown. I'll be the first one to tell you that. Justin Gilbert, whether you want to say the jury's out, I don't think the jury's out on Johnny Manziel. I think that we know exactly what he is. But you look at the draft, Cam Irving, who perhaps does develop into what he's supposed to, but right now he's now sitting behind a third-string undrafted free agent because he was getting shoved back into his own quarterback over and over. Danny Shelton, who I liked, but he is obviously taking an adjustment period to the speed level of the NFL. He is not able to do the things that he thought he was going to be able to do. I go back to my argument that it's as much what the Browns didn't do in the drafts as what they did, because these last 2 drafts were basically chock full of at least 20 of the future wide receivers, 15 at least of the true future wide receivers of the NFL. Passed on each and every one of them, some of them multiple times. Passed on multiple franchise quarterbacks. But regardless of who you passed on, the ones that you picked can't get the job done either. And so I go with all of this. And again, I'm only 3/4 of my way through. And I say, now, would you like to revisit this Mike Pettine discussion with me? If you want to clean house and get rid of them all, clean house and get rid of them all. I believe that Mike Pettine is the only one worth keeping of this. I'd get rid of Alex Shiner too. When Alex Shiner was hired, I had a buddy down in Texas who told me about him. He's a good, he was a good business guy. Building a stadium, he's going to be really good at helping the Browns get that accomplished. And obviously they didn't build a stadium, they redid their stadium. But he's big with that, with the business stuff, selling the naming rights, selling the visage, selling the signage around the stadium, merchandising, the uniforms. Like, that's his stuff. That's what Alex Shiner does. The Browns have new uniforms. They won't be changing them again for a while because you can't. You have to leave them for a while. It's like an NFL rule. So they have new uniforms. They've got the stadium redone. They sold the naming rights for 10 or 20 years, however long it is. Alex Shiner's work is done here. In my opinion, there's not much left for Alex Shiner to do here except do what he's doing now, because now that he doesn't have as much to do on the business side, now he's sticking his hands in the football side. And he's not a football guy. And here you go. You got non-football people interfering in the football department, which is what started many of these problems a year and a half ago. I think Alex Shiner's got to go. I think Ray Farmer's got to go. Sasha Brown, who's underneath him, I think the whole staff's got to go. I think Mike Pettine stays. He's given the option of doing something with the defensive coordinator. I want a veteran defensive coordinator brought in. If I'm Jimmy Haslam, I sit Mike Pettine down and I go, Mike, I want to keep you. There's a couple of things that I need you to do, though. I need you to change your defensive coordinator. I need you to find somebody with some experience. I need you to tweak the scheme. I need you to promise me that this defense will be better next year, and I'm going to hold you accountable. Set expectations for Mike Pettine. Just set him down and say, here's what I need to see next year. I need to see progress here, here, and here. If you do that, we have no issues. Shake hands on it and let that man go coach your football team. Meanwhile, find somebody to executive on the football side to find him the players. If you get somebody to find him the players and you leave that man alone to coach him, I swear to God, I think the Browns could be halfway competent. I'm just saying that if I'm Jimmy Haslam, I think that there's football people telling him exactly what we just talked about right here. There's no doubt in my mind, because I think when football people see what's going on, they see it exactly the way I did just here. And that's not saying that there's not things that Mike Pettine does wrong. Absolutely. I go back to what I said. When I hire a guy or when I get hired somewhere, the way I look at it is, as long as I see A, B, C, D, and E that I can work with, I'll fix F and I'll fix G, because the finished product is going to be worth it. I'll teach this guy how to manage the clock. I'll teach this guy how to do better with whatever things I think he needs to work on, because I do believe that the core of what... Hey, and say what you want about the San Francisco 49ers and the Browns winning that game the other day. They won when, if this team had truly given up, if Mike Pettine was truly the god-awful coach that some people that want him ran out of town would have you believe, they wouldn't have won that game. And they wouldn't have won it the way they did, even though they did it against a bad team. If they had a crap coach, if Mike Pettine was not respected by those players, they would not have beaten San Francisco. And that's just being real. San Francisco has no love for Jim Tomsula at all. He's an interim coach thrown into a bad situation. He doesn't look happy on the sidelines, and they play like they're trying to get rid of him. The Browns did not roll over this week, and to be honest, that's a sign to me that Mike Pettine's worth keeping around. So, I mean, that's just the way I see it. And I thought maybe if I lay it out like that, that it would make some sense. I know that Dan Wismar was supposed to join me a while ago. I may be able to get him in the conversation now. I'm going to take a break. Let's see if we can do just that. Let's try to get Dan Wismar. Matter of fact, I'll send him a text as I'm talking to you that says, how about now? Let's see if we can get Dan in on the conversation. Sorry about that for those of you that tuned in to hear Dan Wismar, but how about we get him in next on this talk about the Browns. We'll jump in with some Indians, some Cavs, and more. News this morning, if you're just joining us, talking about the Cavs. Kyrie Irving tweets that he will not return tomorrow, Thursday. Listening on delay against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Contrary to media reports that are out there, he said if you didn't hear it from me, then it's not happening. He is not heading out there. So let's go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, Dan Wismar is going to join us. Yes, let's get Dan in on the conversation. Sorry about the delay, but we had a good chat there as I laid out my case for why Mike Pettine is the only thing worth keeping in the Browns front office. And we'll pick up there. We'll talk some more with Dan. He was live at the stadium with the 49ers game. We'll get into that and talk about all kinds of things. Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland joins us next, as my man Cool Mo D says in the background. Time to go to work with Dan Wismar when we come back next here on the Sports Fix.
I got the credential, that is the essential to make a rap and chill. Then you know I will fulfill, make a couple of mil as I build a guild for all the rappers to skill and kill the weak rappers with no frills. Hang him in effigy, if he's a sucker, hang him to the left of me, cause my right hand man is my mic stand and the microphone that I own, and my game plan is keeping that steady pace. Ain't no reason to rush, it ain't no race. I'ma hit the top just when I wanna, and it's a matter of time, and I'm gonna, cause I know winter. Go ahead, enter the classic Moji rap that sent you running around, holding your hand, asking your homeboy, yo man, you heard what he said? Another funky rhythm. Look at your man and give him a high five, cause I'm live, run around with him, telling everybody hanging out on the block, it's time to wake up and check the clock. I go
The Sports Fix, your choice for intelligent talk.
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Intelligent talk.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good.
It could have been a lot better.
I didn't really like it.
These guys must be on the wrong station.
It was pretty terrible.
It was bad.
It was awful.
It was terrible.
Get him away!
Hey, boo!
Boo!
The Sports Fix.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Harry Buffalo, join the herd. Football season is party season at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. And no matter who you root for, everyone wins at Harry Buffalo. Every Saturday is Coors Light College Football Saturday with $6 pitchers, 4 bottles for $10, and the Buckeyes in full HD. Every Sunday, all the Browns action with Bud Light beer specials and $10 hair of the dog pitchers.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. That's some fun.
Plus, every Monday night, catch the Monday Night Football action with some of your favorite Browns players. Football season is most definitely party season, and your headquarters is Harry Buffalo North Olmsted all winter long. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
Here we go, bring it on in. It's time now. It's all city. We got to do it for them, dog. We got to do it for Cleveland. They're waiting on us.
Every single night, every single practice, every single game, we got to give it all we got, because they're going to ride with us. Everything that we do on this floor, because of this city, we owe them. We're going to grind for this city. They're going to support us, man, but we got to give it all back to them. We get it done. The toughness that we have on the court is going to come from this city. Everybody, the whole city of Cleveland, that's what it's all about. It's time to bring them something special. Let's go. Bring it on in, everybody. Let's go. Hard work on 3. Together on 6. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6. It's all us. Cleveland on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Hey, everybody. Listen up.
Listen up, guys. Hey, guys. Listen up.
No one should ever hit a woman.
Not their wife, not their girlfriend, not their date. No woman should have to fear violence, especially not from someone they know and trust.
But that's the reality for too many women.
We have to change it.
It's up to each of us, because even one is too many.
Violence against women hurts all of us. Growing up, I was ashamed and afraid of my father when he abused my mom.
The worst abuse of power is when a man raises his hand to hurt a woman.
We all have to take responsibility. So if you see someone threatening a woman, step up, speak out, and get help.
Dating violence hurts all of us. So step up and help end it. Because one is too many.
One is too many.
One is too many.
One is too many.
End the violence.
Because it's wrong.
Because one is too many.
The Sports Fix. Who are you?
James Bond.
Good evening, Mr. Bond. I've been expecting your call. Allow me to introduce you to my little friend, the hold button. This is why Yoda only handles the phone calls on the Sports Fix. Please call him or we are doomed.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix live any way you want it. That's right. We had to switch things up, but we got it the way we need it. Dan Wismar getting ready to join us from the Cleveland Fan, from Everybody Hates Cleveland, guys, as we've been rocking and rolling. Good show. Opened up the phones earlier. Thank you if you're just joining us, or if you've been here the entire time. We've been talking some Browns, little Cavs, little Hot Rod Williams memories earlier. I'm going to talk a little bit about all of those things and more with Dan. You guys can keep talking right along with us. Facebook, Twitter, email, facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfix, CLE, email, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Is that what? Hey, it's two computers, two mouses, mice, however you want to call it. Let's get to the phone lines. Let's find the right button and get Dan Wismar in with us. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jerry. Sorry we got our signals crossed there. Last time I talked with you, you were not in a great mood. In fact, if you had any hair, I think you would have been tearing it out about that time. But glad to see you got things back in order.
That was that was Monday. That was some of the problems we had behind the scenes, and we've been off on Wednesdays for the last couple of weeks. So I knew right away when you were not in the queue when we came back from break last time. I said, Dan doesn't think there's a show today. I knew what was up, and I'm just glad we were able to get this worked out and get you back in here. So it worked out. I texted you. I said, hey, man, if I didn't know I could talk before, I know I can now, because I just did. I mean, I don't want to say stall because it was a good segment, but I just went 35 minutes going, well, I think I waited long enough. I think I can get Dan in on the conversation now, though. But I laid out Mike Pettine should listen to the last segment of the show and hire a brother to be his representative.
Well, yeah, I understand that you were making your case for Mike Pettine being the only one to stay around. Sorry I missed that, but I was with that way of thinking when the season started, Jerry. As the season's gone along, though, and we've talked a little bit about this, I've had less and less ammunition in my gun to fire to keep Mike Pettine. The coach's job is to get the most out of the talent that he's got, to get people to play with emotion, to get people to play together, and certainly there have been times this year when we haven't seen any evidence of that. But sum up your case for me in a Twitter 140 characters or so.
Oh, come on, I don't know if I can sum it up that succinctly. Basically, my case is more, and you and I have talked about some of these things along the way because I referenced some of our previous conversations, but I kind of went through the timeline. I said, guys, let's just listen to this and let's put things on the scale. And I said, I'll give you that Mike Pettine needs to work on clock management. And obviously, all of this being said comes with the qualification. If I'm Jimmy Haslam, I sit Mike Pettine down and I say, here's what I want. I believe that you are the guy that I want. Here's what I need. Number one, I need the defensive coordinator changed. I mean, that just has to be done, and that's a deal breaker. If we agree that we're good there, that we're going to – and then I'm going to set expectations. I'm not going to set wins or nothing like that. Here's what I need. I need to see this type of improvement, and as long as I see this, we continue to go forward. I make my expectations one-on-one, not to the media, not to anybody else. I look at Mike Pettine like a man, and I say, here's the expectations, and now he knows what he's got to do to continue to move forward in the job. Because my point is basically rewind the clock to the day Mike Pettine was hired. He was hired by Joe Banner. He was hired to follow a plan that he, Jimmy Haslam, and Joe Banner were in agreement upon. Less than 2 weeks later, his boss, the man that hired him, was gone, and a different person with a different plan was now in charge. And that was the beginning of a dysfunctional relationship. But I went through the whole going through the drafting of Manziel, which I continue to say sent this franchise, no matter what you think of that young man's talent, completely altered the direction of this franchise. This franchise was coming into the 2014-2015 season with a built-in feel-good story at quarterback, with the comeback of Brian Hoyer being the main interest at the quarterback position, and would he be able to be what perhaps people thought he was during that little sample that they saw at the beginning of the season before he got hurt. I believe that roll right into the drafting of Manziel and how the Browns immediately got on their high horse, especially the business side of things. How all of a sudden they played boss with training camp, and they're deciding who gets in and who gets access, and they rule the world until they got the kid on the football field and realized that they were sold a bill of goods. And I went on through the quarterback battles, through the pressures coming from the front office, through the whole situation. I mean, you lose regardless. You are 7-4, and I don't care. You can, if you're going to look at me and tell me that right now Mike Pettine is 3-10, I'm going to look at you and say that at that point they were 7-4. You can't argue the quality of the wins and losses in one case and not in the other. Obviously, you lost Mac. Things fell apart on the offensive line. You had a patchwork offense that was not just doing well, but was exceeding expectations throughout the season, along with last year's Dwayne Bowe in Ben Tate, which was another mistake that the front office made and saddled Mike Pettine with, along with the busted draft picks of last year. He's got all of the foolishness going on around Johnny Manziel. Obviously, when he finally put that young man on the field, as we've discussed on and on, to me, the results vindicated Mike Pettine for everything that he had went through up until that point in time. He was the only person with a lick of common sense in that entire organization. His offensive coordinator blackmailed his way out of the franchise at the end of the season in the first year of a 4-year contract and was allowed to do so. Why? Because clearly there were reasons he was allowed. How many coaches in history have their general manager suspended for directly interfering in their job and doing things outside the bounds of his position? Because that doesn't happen every day. Meanwhile, go to this season. While you're dealing with your suspension, we've talked about every week how Mike Pettine's doing 3 conferences in 1 every day because he has to talk for everybody, because he's the only person who is being asked to be held accountable for anything. He is, and maybe he's the sacrificial lamb for all of them. Maybe they'll all stay and blame Mike Pettine, and that allows everybody to stay one big happy family. But to me, all of the crap that the Browns have gone through in these regards, that Mike Pettine has had to deal with. You put Bill Belichick in that position, he quits after a day and tells you, kiss my ass, I don't need this. You put any other coach in there, and I say I'm hard-pressed to see him have much more success on the field than Mike Pettine has had. And for whatever disvalue I give the victory over the 49ers, which is a lot because they are awful and they are worse than the Browns, if this team truly wasn't playing for Mike Pettine, they would have lost that game too. They came to play. He can still get them up to play. I believe that he has not lost this team. I do believe he has to dump Jim O'Neill. Clearly that's an issue. But I'm sorry. I think that the case of things that Mike Pettine has had surrounding him are an obscene set of circumstances for any head coach.
No argument. And I think that he has handled those situations admirably. I've said it a number of times, from Josh Gordon to Johnny Manziel, dealing with
forgot about Josh Gordon. Thank you.
That he's been dealt. So that said, my only disclaimer or caveat or whatever on that is that first of all, there is zero justification for keeping Ray Farmer beyond continuity for continuity's sake. Okay, and so if you do that, I just have said all along that it's unfair to the new general manager to saddle him with a coach that's not of his choosing. Yeah. I'll continue to say that, and that's why I think that Pettine may end up going, even if he is not deserving of being fired. So do you agree that Farmer must go, bottom line, and that instead of doing it ass backwards like you did last time where you had the coach in place and then hired the GM, that you at least go out and get somebody new to run the organization and then not dictate to him who his head coach is?
See, that is a good catch-22, and that's why I was really anxious to get you in on this, because I can totally dig where you're at there, because definitely Farmer has to go. Farmer has to go. He is awful at his job. That's all there is to it. He was a good assistant, and many times you see that. And maybe you'll make that argument for Pettine. He's a good assistant that when put in the big chair, his deficiencies came through in spades. So that being said, he's got to go. And you're right. It is unfair to bring a new, unless, now see, here's the thing. I'm curious what the mentality would be on the guys that I'm interviewing, because I'm wondering, and my argument earlier was, I think if Jimmy Haslam is talking to football people, not listening to the media, not listening to sports talk, not listening to the fans even, and he's not listening to Alex Shiner, he's calling a Bill Parcells, he's calling in guys that he trusts and saying, hey, just talk to me. What the hell is going on here? What am I doing right? What do you think of my situation? I think a lot of them are making many of the arguments that I'm making, and I think that especially the ones that are former coaches perhaps would feel that way. But I look at Mike Pettine. I see enough redeemable and enough that I can fix the things that I think need tweaked. But I wonder how many people coming into that potential general manager or football president position, whatever you want to call it, I wonder how many people would be of the mindset that it's more detrimental to change the coach, because I think that there's football people right now I think if there wasn't football people telling Jimmy Haslam to hold out and not be too quick to let go of Mike Pettine, then Mike Pettine would already be fired. I think a couple of weeks ago, Jimmy would have just fired him. I honestly believe that the heat was so bad, and we see how quick Jimmy Haslam will let a guy go. There has to be people telling him. Maybe they're telling him to wait until the end of the season, but I think that he is torn, because I think he's got some football people telling him, stick to your guns with your coach, and then he's got other people saying exactly what you're saying, blow the whole freaking thing up and start over again. I think that it'd be interesting, the conversations of what those potential general manager candidates would say, because I wonder how many of them would say, I see something in this guy I can work with. He would have to agree to do it this way or change this. And so maybe that's where it blows up. But I wonder how many people would look at Mike Pettine and go, he's got to go. Or would they see perhaps what I see? Because I see a guy that can learn better clock management, but I also see a guy that, against a crappy team, whatever, found a way to get a team that has been in the tank for weeks to come up and play a football game.
Right. Well, first of all, I think Jimmy wants to avoid the perception that if he can do something that involves bringing in a new league football executive, call him president, call him GM, whatever, he would rather, create the perception that he is, quote unquote, reorganizing his front office than that he is cleaning house.
Right.
Okay. Again. Because that's what it's going to be. Ho-hum, the Browns fire everybody again and start over, and this is their problem. This is a symptom of the problem rather than a solution to the problem. So I think if he can do anything, and by firing one guy and keeping the other, he would at least be taking a step in that direction of reorganizing his front office, as opposed to new broom sweeping everybody out the door and starting over again with a whole new regime. So there may be something to that certainly Jimmy knows that everybody's been telling him since he bought the team that he needs to have some stability, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, the house that he came from, using them as the example, and that continuity is a good thing, stability is what you need to create here.
And
so
Dan,
I just think he's sensitive to that perception, and if that means he needs to alter his choice of a general manager or a football executive to somebody who's willing to sit still for that, or at least maybe, as we've talked about, have Mike Pettine on a 1-year probationary period while the new person evaluates what he's got on the field. That would seem to be a common sense way for Jimmy to go to avoid that perception that it's just same old all over again.
And there's a great point. That's perfectly what I was going to segue back into anyway, because I was going to bring up a similar example, but I think that the smart executive thinks the way you just said right there. And he may be smart enough to go, yeah, it's easy for me to come in and chop heads and start with a clean slate. But perhaps my potential pool, unless this is a guy coming in with a guy, like if it's a two-man team coming in together and it's a prearranged deal. But if I'm going to have to interview and hire coaches, then it may improve my pool of potential coaches to keep this guy for a year or two, if only to give me a better group of candidates to eventually hire my guy, like you just said. I'll go back to Mike Holmgren. Right here, we've got our own example of this exact situation. When Holmgren came in, hindsight being what it is, he said he should have gotten rid of Shermer from the get-go, or Mangini from the get-go, and went with his guy. But he didn't. He went a year with it, and they were of completely disparate paths in how to play football. One believed in ground control and defense, and one believed in offense and quarterbacks and all of that. That's where the problem is. If you're in different places, it's never going to work. But if it's if they have similar beliefs, if the new guy sits down with Mike Pettine and likes everything he hears, then he absolutely does not need to say off with his head just to clean the slate. So I think that's what it is. It's really going to determine the mindset. But I think, you know, if you're looking for a good sign right off the bat, I think a good sign would be keeping the guy, because it tells me that A, he's looking for some stability, but B, he's forward thinking and going, even if this isn't the guy, I get a better bite at a new coach if I keep this guy another year or two than if we redo this whole thing all over again.
Yeah, that's true, and that may be the way it goes. First of all, let me ask you this: either during the game or immediately after the game, might even have been just prior to the game, there was a report floated. It was reported on the radio, and I think we were en route to or from the game, and I can't remember because I didn't have time to dig into it or look any further into it. But some national writer, and I forget who it was, you probably know this, reported that word is, as they always say, word is that Jimmy Haslam has decided to keep both Ray Farmer and Mike Pettine in place, for next season, not just till the end of the season. Do you recall having heard that on game day, or maybe early Sunday, maybe even Saturday, that this national report came out that the decision had been made that Haslam was planning to keep them both on?
No, I
was on the road. That you heard? I heard it reported on the radio, and that's why, not that you can always give credence to that stuff, but I just wondered, and I thought to myself, huh? What? Not believing what I was hearing, but and again, it is true. It means that the rumor that he was kicking the tires on Urban Meyer was totally false. That's another reason that I felt that maybe he was planning to clean house, because he was, at least, as I said the other day, at least he's aiming high. Even though he had no shot at getting Urban Meyer, at least he's looking at somebody that would make a big splash and be a big name.
Wow, yeah. No, see, I was on the road up until early Sunday morning, so I hadn't, but that would be very interesting. Part of me wonders what the mentality would the mentality be, because he wants to keep stability. I know for a fact that he's got people telling him, you've got to keep some stability here, Ray, or Jimmy, you can't blow the whole thing up. Part of me wonders with that report there, if Jimmy Haslam hasn't convinced himself that if he's going to keep one, it's only fair to keep the other, or else get rid of them both. Maybe they're stuck in this thing as a package deal one way or another. Their relationship does not seem to work, although I completely disagree with this false narrative that the anti-Pettine people have put out here all season, and it's getting stronger by the day, that the only reason that many of these guys are unsuccessful is because of Mike Pettine. I'm sorry. I don't know that I've ever seen a team in history where when the head coach was replaced, all of a sudden 24 players stopped being garbage and all of a sudden became good, because I kind of ranted about this earlier in the show. I got very ticked off at the very misleading article in the Plain Dealer yesterday about Dwayne Bowe. And basically, you ask this guy, he's an all-pro receiver that can't get on the field because Mike Pettine won't let him play. Meanwhile, That is completely contrary to what you and I and every other Browns fan have seen in the limited time he has been on the field. He's been slow, lazy, ran the wrong plays, and doesn't even know the playbook. Yet somehow it's now popular to blame Mike Pettine for Dwayne Bowe, for Justin Gilbert, for Johnny Manziel, for now, I guess, Cam Irving. And apparently Mike Pettine just can't develop anybody. And if there was any other coach here, these guys would be worthy of their draft status. That Bowe article really got to me yesterday because last year, Dwayne Bowe was garbage. He didn't play for the Browns. He didn't play for Mike Pettine, and he was garbage. He hasn't been good in 5 years, yet somehow he's scratching his head and trying to figure out why Mike Pettine won't put him in the game.
Yeah, exactly right. I just read that piece this morning, Jerry, and I couldn't believe it either. That you used the right word. It's a real head scratcher for Dwayne Bowe to figure out why he can't get on the field. He's sitting around wondering just what it is. He's never seen anything quite like it before in his career.
Never seen anything like it. Never.
Was he scratching his head all last year in Kansas City when he didn't catch a single touchdown pass? Was that a puzzlement to him as well? And why they just kind of passed on retaining him? So yeah, that was ridiculous. And what's even more gutless about it is that he wouldn't name Pettine. In any of the quotes, he was being very circumspect about that. And I just thought it was a ridiculous article. I'm surprised. Well, I shouldn't say I'm surprised. Surprised that the Plain Dealer even saw fit to publish it, because it was just basically one whining complaint after another throughout the whole thing from a guy who doesn't have a leg to stand on in terms of criticizing anybody else for his lack of production.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous. So yeah, I was that irritated the hell out of me too when I saw it this morning, because he was too gutless to name anyone, and then sitting there as if his own injuries and his own failure to produce and get on the field was someone else's problem.
Yeah,
someone else's fault.
Ray Farmer should take him out of his speed dial after this season. That's all I'm saying, man. And he even alluded to that in the article. Bowe, he's like, yeah, I called some friends, and I thought maybe I had some people in the organization here that were behind me. Yeah, you called in a favor from your buddy, and you said, holy crap, he's going to pay me for 2 years? Hey, Ray, let's go have a steak and shake on this one, man. I mean, come on, man. And, I'll say the same thing about him that you go back a year ago to Ben Tate. When he got cut, he didn't, one or two teams looked at him for a day or two and kicked him loose as well. If Dwayne Bowe is cut today, he doesn't have a future in the NFL tomorrow, and I'll stick by that to anybody. There's no team in this league that's, maybe if they need a practice squad guy or something to fill a roster spot the rest of the season, but even then, and it would only be because the Browns are already paying him anyway, so he basically would be a free player on the field. But no team is signing Dwayne Bowe. If he leaves Cleveland right now, his career ends.
Oh, yeah, I agree. In fact, I saw the other day that Hankerson got cut by the Redskins. I'm thinking he's as good as anybody we've got, at least now that Hartline's down. I would hope they'd be kicking the tires on Leonard Hankerson out of Miami, because he's been in the league 2-3 years now and pretty productive guy.
No,
so I don't
didn't
know
he come from Atlanta? Isn't he? Wasn't he playing for Atlanta this year?
I guess maybe it was Atlanta. I think he started out maybe with the Redskins, but yeah, I think you're right about that.
I had him on my fantasy team, so I know he played for the Falcons this year because I've got him in fantasy football. And Hankerson's a good little receiver. They liked him in Atlanta. I'm kind of shocked that he's out there. That's a guy I would get a look at for sure. If I'm going to bring in Terrell Pryor for a look, I would definitely bring in Leonard Hankerson for a look. That's for sure. Speaking of Terrell Pryor, he may actually play this week. The Browns down some more. As you brought up Brian Hartline, he went out. You were at the game the other day. All right, I'm going to start at the top of the pyramid. I'll ask you the question. Neither one of us can control what happens here with Mike Pettine. Johnny Manziel, I will be fair and start it by saying that 1 year ago, he couldn't go 21 for 31 on an empty field. He was able to do it against the 49ers this week, and he threw for 270. I again caution people, don't call me a hater, but I will remind you that that's less than what the average quarterback has thrown for this year against the 49ers. That's how bad the 49ers are, is that the average quarterback is actually thrown for about 50 yards a game more than what Manziel did against the the 49ers. Either way, it doesn't matter. But I remind people that for as bad as you think the Browns are, they are 27th on defense, and the 49ers are 28th. They are even worse than the Browns. The Browns had 9 sacks. Come on now. They haven't had 9 sacks all year. They had 250 yards rushing. They haven't had that all year added together either. I mean, you have to look at this and be happy that they won the game. But I think that, I mentioned that after the game, an hour later, I didn't feel any different than I did the week before or the week before or the week before because I just got no joy out of beating such a bad football team.
Well, that's true, and that was a little bit weird being down there. In fact, we were talking about that at the game. First of all, when the Browns got up 10-0 in the first half, no one has it. It's not like the crowd gets all pumped up and into it because everybody's waiting for the other shoe to drop. But what's really weird is being in the fourth quarter, halfway through the fourth with a 3-touchdown lead, and we're all just looking at each other, shrugging our shoulders, thinking, oh, my God, because no one knows how to act when the Browns have a 3-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter. This is just uncharted waters for us, and really it is a strange feeling. It was a little bit subdued. I've noticed this throughout the season, that the Browns, even if they're up, they were up 20-10 on the Cardinals at halftime. Came back out in the second half, and not only was the team flat coming out, but the crowd was completely silent, like sitting on their hands. When you'd think that kickoff for the second half, up 10 points over a team that you're a heavy underdog to, that the crowd would be heavily into it. They're not, and people are slow to come back after the half and get back into the game. I don't know if it's just a Cleveland thing. I just noticed it this year more than ever. But that was again the case Sunday, where the team was the crowd, I should say, was just you could have heard a pin drop when the third quarter started in that place. And I commented about it at the time. But yeah, it is a strange feeling. And I too came out of the game, okay, it's almost like, hey, all right, guys, you owed us that one,
Right.
We had that one coming. You don't deserve any plaudits, any praise, for winning your third game out of 13. It's like we had that one coming. That was owed to us. So I think there was a little bit of that attitude. As far as Johnny goes, sure, everybody can see some improvement. You'd have to be a hater, I should say, to deny that the kid's gotten better and the kid has a better sense of things maybe slowing down a little bit for him. And he did find some receivers, and he does bring an element of mobility and of speed that your average quarterback in the NFL just does not have, and he can keep plays alive where other quarterbacks would have been sacked, and he has been able to get out of the pocket and make some plays, as well as, make some throws from the pocket that weren't bad. So I'm not going to sit there and slam the guy. I think right now I feel pretty good if I was a team going into a football season with Johnny Manziel as my backup quarterback.
That's where I'm at. I'm with you there.
That's where I am with it.
No,
I think
I'm with
we're
you
developing there. I think we're developing a pretty good backup quarterback there.
And that's kind of what I was saying at the beginning of the show.
I don't think we're developing a franchise quarterback.
Thank you. At the beginning of the show, I said, hey, if you're happy with saying, oh, I've seen enough that we can go forward with this guy, what he's shown you is exactly what you said, that he can beat the dregs of the league. This is not franchise building. I mean, the Browns have important decisions. They're clearly going to be the number 1 or number 2 pick in the draft. They're most likely going to be 3-13 unless miracles never cease. They beat Pittsburgh. That's the only chance they have because they're getting steamrolled on the road these next 2 weeks, and that's I love the Browns, but if you think that they have a chance in hell to go into Seattle or Kansas City against teams fighting for the playoffs, those are 2 top 10 defenses. I think Seattle's number 3, Kansas City's number 8. Those guys are no joke over there, especially against the run. Crow's not getting through the line of scrimmage. I mean, and that was something that I brought up before you joined us as well. I said, people act like the Browns hadn't attempted a handoff all season. Like Crow just, wow, look at how good the offense is when we run the ball. They've tried to run the ball all season long. The holes aren't there and the lanes aren't there, and the guy runs into his own offensive lineman most of the time. So let's not pretend that they just figured out a handoff here this week. That was a once-in-a-lifetime game. Enjoy it, because it is going to get ugly as things go. Real quick, we'll keep going where we're going, guys. Word just came in. Indians with a signing. Mike Napoli, first baseman, signs a 1-year, 7-year contract with the Indians. Napoli played for the Red Sox in Texas last year. I think he hit about 250 with 18 home runs combined, 50 RBIs for those teams last year. He's got some pop in the bat. He's hit no less than 18 home runs for the last decade. He's had a high of 30 a few years ago. So some power there. We'll talk about that in a minute. But going back to the Browns there and that the other day, I'm with you. Like, I just couldn't I couldn't get, and I feel bad because you should. Like you said, they owe it to you to get all into it, but I couldn't because, you know, they had 9 sacks. They're sending me, Brown sending me yippee game notes saying, hey, this is the most in franchise history except for this game. And I'm looking and I'm going, no, come on. We cannot compare what they just did yesterday to the 84 or the 88 or the 86 defenses. Come on now. This is not the same world we're living in, guys. Let's not even do that. But that was the type of game that it was. So just bottle it up and put it on your highlight reel because it's going to get bumpy here the next few weeks.
Yeah, no doubt. Although I think there was some room for optimism on that defense because of the fact that they had rookies that were playing that you can see improving. Orchard. And I'm talking about Xavier Cooper, and I'm talking about Danny Shelton, and I'm talking about Nate Orchard.
Yes,
those are guys that showed up Sunday, and you know, say, okay, well, maybe Nate Orchard might be a nice player somewhere down the line, or maybe Xavier Cooper shows you some stuff, shows you some speed and agility for a big man that maybe you weren't sure whether he had it or not.
But
also the Browns got a very good game out of Armani Bryant, who, although not a rookie, missed a lot of time his rookie season and in his first year or two in the league, and now is looking like he may be a player as well. At least it looked like the Browns had some guys that might at some point in time develop into pass rush threats and decent front seven people. So that was encouraging to me, even though, obviously it was against a bad team. These guys are starting to show the kind of improvement you'd hope to see in your rookies over a course of a year.
See, Dan, here I go playing negative to your positive, but I disagree with that because it's not. I don't look at it as just a bad team, but I look at the areas that they're bad and everything that you're talking about there. San Francisco is god-awful on the offensive line. They have the worst offensive line in the NFL this season. Their offense is, you think the Browns are bad? I mean, they're averaging 190 yards passing a game, 30th in the league. They're averaging 90 yards a game rushing, 22nd in the league. 14 points a game, dead last in the league. They're leading the league in giving up sacks, in tackles for losses. I mean, so part of me says all of those things that you're finding optimism in, I'm saying that it was against a team where those are all their biggest weaknesses. Not just a bad team, but a team that specifically is very bad at blocking and allowing teams to get to the quarterback, and offensively just terrible. I mean, San Francisco, I think they have the worst offensive line in the NFL.
Yeah, that may be. And of course, Alex Boone went down with an injury. I'm not sure if he came back after that or not, but he's at least one guy that they had that was pretty solid at right guard, and the ex-Buckeye. And he left that game with an injury. And again, I'm not sure whether he made it back or not. But yeah, you're right, and your point's well made. That that our guys looked good against some awful players. Still, I at least on a couple of those guys, and especially Orchard and Cooper, I thought looked better than what we've seen so far. And you'd hope that in Game 13 they'd be better than they looked in Game 3, and I think it's fair to say they are, regardless of the competition.
Yeah, and I like you named the guys that I did like what I saw. I want to see more for the rest of the season of Nate Orchard, of Xavier Cooper. I mean, it's time to let those guys loose. For everybody who wants to argue with me about Manziel, I'm much more interested in seeing if any of these other guys have got some juice in the tank here, so we know what we've got going into next year. Guys keep going down. Hayden's out for the season. Hartline's out for the season. Opportunity is going to open up. There'll be opportunity here for Terrell Pryor to see if he's got anything to offer going forward as a wide receiver. I think they get Hawkins back here maybe for the last.
Gabriel comes back this week.
Gabriel's the one that's back from the concussion.
He's back, and you did see Pryor in there for a couple plays.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to do anything, but he was at least taking
No,
some
he didn't.
snaps.
Yeah, he was at least on the field. We saw 17 out there, so maybe they'll figure out a role for him coming up here, and hopefully they're at least looking out at the waiver wire or the free agent pool, because you talk about an opportunity for some wide receiver to come in here and maybe earn himself a job for next year. You think they'd be? You hope they'd be out there looking at least.
But I don't think they are, because actually, you look at the signings, the last couple, and I was shocked. In the same press release that they tell me we're putting Brian Hartline on the injured reserve and we signed another running back. And I'm like, well, that's great. I understand that Glenn Winston is in the concussion protocol, so we need another running back, but I'm pretty sure we need some wide receivers just to have enough to play this week. Although I think the way the Browns look at that, man, they're content to play the guys that they've got. They want to get a good look at Pryor, and they've got Bo if they. I'm just saying. I think.
And Gabriel takes the place of Hartline.
Exactly, and I think if
so
they need anybody
they are
else,
looking at it that way. I'm sure. Speaking of running backs, there's some normally, and I said this to one of the guys at the game when Sean Drone broke off a good run for the 49ers. I said, normally, I said, when you get cut by the Cleveland Browns, your career is over. But I see Sean Drone has managed to land with another team. And then the other night, I'm watching. Was it the Cowboys and Turbin is playing for them now?
Yes.
So here's two running backs that the Browns had on their roster this year that they chose to move on without, as opposed to continue with, and they're playing elsewhere in the NFL. So maybe that's not a good rule of thumb anymore. That when you get waived by the Browns, you just go down and work at the convenience store.
And that's where I go back to Ray Farmer, because at the end of the day, Mike Pettine chooses the 46 out of the 53 that dress, but he does not control the day-to-day roster. That is Ray Farmer. Who they cut, who they sign, who they put on the practice squad, that's Ray Farmer. He signs them, Mike Pettine figures out what to do with them, and you look at those decisions. I mean, clearly, Drone didn't he come from the San Francisco organization and then found his way back over there? I know Winston did. I can't remember if that's where Drone started out with or not. But either way, San Francisco saw something they liked in him. Dallas saw something that they liked in Turbin. I mean, Turbin, for all the talk, they bumped Pryor in the beginning of the season and then filled the spot with him, waited out his injury, got him in the mix. He had the one game, fumbled the ball, and he was toast. He was done, and that was about it for him.
Yeah, you're right, and I'm not saying that either Drone or Turbin are preferable to guys that we have currently on the roster, whether it be Crow or Duke Johnson or whoever. Not saying that, but I was just making the point that and like I said, Drone went from a bad offense to a worse offense, so that sort of makes your point as well.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. We'll see what happens when the Browns go to Seattle. And I was joking. I said they got the 12th man, but Seattle could possibly win this one with 10, just being real, looking at the game. They've won 4 in a row, 7 out of 8. They're on a roll now, looking to get themselves where they thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season. They're now beginning to get there. Russell Wilson, what's he got? Back-to-back 5-touchdown games. Am I right about that?
I think that's right. And I think he has a streak of 4 or more games with the 4 or more.
Yes.
And some kind of a record in that regard as well. They really are playing great lately. I thought at one point they were, I think, 3-5 or 4-5.
Yes, and looking like they may miss the playoffs.
And it looked like, one more loss, they were going to be really risking missing out on the playoffs altogether. And they really have turned it around, and they're playing lights out right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's going to be a tough challenge for this team just to survive and not get hurt. Speaking of that, real quick, just throw this out here. Joe Thomas is injured. He has a knee injury. Mike Pettine announced today that he is out of practice all week and that they plan on him playing on Sunday. But as we all know, the one thing that the Browns have held their hat on for over 10 years is that Joe Thomas plays every snap of every game, and that streak is in jeopardy. So we'll see if he gets out there and plays against Seattle. But he has been pulled from practice, and they say it's precautionary, but they believe he's going to play. But you could quite possibly see the first missed playing time of Joe Thomas's career, depending on how his knee recovers in the next couple of days.
Interesting. I had not heard that. That was just announced momentarily ago, or what?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the injury came out of the game, but Mike Pettine just had his press conference about a half an hour ago, and he announced that they're sitting him for the rest of the week, and it'll be a game-time decision whether Joe Thomas plays on Sunday.
I guess there'd be plenty of rationale for not playing him.
What is his streak? Well, his streak would be the only reason to play.
You don't figure you have a shot to win this game anyway. And I couldn't even tell you who the backup left tackle is.
Do we even have one? I don't even know that we've ever had a backup left tackle because we don't need one. But
it might even turn out to be Cam Irving.
You're right.
Who they like backing up all those spots for some crazy reason.
I think he's better at tackle than guard anyway. Joe Thomas, for those of you that don't know the numbers, 141 games, 141 starts, has played every offensive play since being picked by the Browns, number 3, in 2007. It is a total of 8,763 consecutive offensive snaps. It is the longest active stretch in football.
That's remarkable. Really remarkable.
Especially offensive line. I mean, that's a position where guys get banged up all the time. And, I mean, that to me says something about the toughness of the guy there for sure.
No doubt about it. What's your take, just changing the subject a little bit, what's your take on Napoli? Are you pumped about that one?
Yeah, good switch back. Mike Napoli, if you're just joining us here, J-Rocc, Dan Wismar talking about it. 1 year, 7-year contract. The Indians this morning signed, actually just a few hours.
$7 million?
$7 million for one season. I'm not sure if there's an option or anything. I'll get the email from the Indians with the officials here in a moment. But Napoli's been playing since, 2006 he broke into the league, spent his first 5 years with the Angels, then did a couple years in Texas, then Boston, then went back to Texas in a late season. Was it a trade at the end of the last season, I think? And he played the last 30 or so games down there. But this is a guy who's got pop with the bat. As I mentioned, in his last decade here, he has never hit less than 18 home runs in a season. His high water mark was 30 back in 2011. His high mark for RBIs was 92 back in 2013. Last year, if you're just looking at that production, he did very well for the last part of the season in Texas. He hit 300, but that was for just a 40-game stretch. He hit 300 with 5 home runs and 10 RBIs. But overall last year, he was about a 250 hitter with 18 home runs and 50 RBIs. I mean, clearly that's a position of need. That's a corner infield position and power numbers, and he does have that. I mean, hey, just take the 18 home runs that he hit last year, and that puts him tops on the Indians, doesn't it? Or right there on the list.
I think Santana had 20, but
20,
or thereabouts. Not exactly sure about that, but yeah, it puts him either. I think second on the team in homers if he hits 18.
Right.
The people that have been crying for right-handed power
now
have to be somewhat happy about that.
How is Napoli defensively? I mean, obviously, I have not watched this guy play day in and day out, so I guess that's maybe where I have some questions. I'm looking as we speak, actually, trying to find some advanced defensive metrics here to see.
Yeah, that was my question too, Jared. Is the guy going to be purely a DH, right-handed DH against left-handed pitching, or is he going to play first base a couple times a week to give Santana a break, or what's the plan? I'm sure the team will clarify a little bit on that, but you'd think he'd be automatically DHing against every left-handed pitcher, and maybe playing a little bit of first base as well.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, they were using him in the outfield a little bit last year. Am I right?
I believe so.
I think he had some games in the outfield where they were trying him in left field a little bit. At least I have some vague memory of that.
And that may be part of the Indians' plans here as well, I mean...
I don't know if I want to have a steady diet of Mike Napoli in my outfield, but and again, the Indians are kind of hurting for corner outfielders right now, too, with Brantley out.
And you know what? Part of me wonders if this isn't the precursor to perhaps, some secondary moves that come. Perhaps you had to acquire this person or that person, because as you know, all the trade talks out there, I really do believe that there's a trade coming, that the Indians are going to pull the trigger. It's just a matter of finding what they want, and I think they're going to be very patient. Bruce just updated that contract. It's 1 year, $7 million, and $3 million in incentives as well. And I'm a big fan of incentive-based contracts in general because I just think that it's natural instinct. Not that a guy tries harder, but I mean, on those dog days, you go, damn, I got an extra $1 million riding on this. Let's pick up the energy a little bit, you know?
Oh, yeah, I'm all for that. And in terms of the trade and the tribe, we've heard basically two things coming out of the winter meeting. One is that the Indians are not really interested in trading for prospects because they are looking for players that can help them right now to major league level. And second of all, that they are more interested in trading their prospects than they are trading their members of their current starting pitching rotation.
See?
Because they realize that there's such a high value right now. Unless somebody really bowls them over, don't expect them to move a Salazar Carrasco.
No, but you know what,
or even a Bauer, because they realize that the premium, they are sitting on the premium commodities in baseball today, which is young starting pitching under team control for multiple years.
But you know what? Bruce in the chat room, that's exactly what I was insinuating when I said perhaps this is the precursor to what comes next. Is I think this is a guy that sits right in Carlos Santana's wheelhouse, and I could see this being a move that you make if you're going to package Carlos Santana maybe with a pitcher or in some type of a deal with some prospects. And Bruce in the chat room just mentioned that over on the MLB network, they were talking about a potential Mets deal with the Indians involving Santana. Something like that is what makes a signing like this make a lot more sense, because now you've got the guy to fill the gap, and perhaps instead of giving up a higher caliber of pitching, maybe by including Santana, you can now get away with a prospect and not necessarily one of your top 5 guys. So perhaps that may be where we're going. That's what I was thinking when I said precursor to something else, because as soon as I heard Napoli, I said, man, does that mean they may be open to moving Santana? Because that's something that a lot of people have speculated anyway.
Yeah, that may be. And who knows? Any names mentioned with the New York Mets?
No, I mean, again, I'm not watching. I don't know what the current. This is, I guess, a discussion happening on the MLB channel, so I can't talk about that, and I haven't had any chance to look into it yet. But that would be interesting. Again, I mean, I just think that when you. I can't see it. I can't see them moving Santana by himself. But if you package Santana with a pitcher, all of a sudden the caliber of pitcher you move out doesn't have to necessarily be, a Salazar.
Top 4. It could be a Cody
guy.
Anderson maybe, or someone like
Right.
that, or maybe even a more of a prospect.
I mean, what do you think? I mean, I wasn't bowled over at first, but I think I may have mentioned last time we talked, I kind of dug the Joey Butler thing because I don't like him in a platoon. I just like developing him. I think in a year or two, he could be a heck of a full-time player.
Yeah, that's true, and I must admit to not knowing a heck of a lot about Joey Butler, other than he's a guy that spoiled Carrasco's no-no last year. But no, beyond that, I got to admit I don't know a heck of a lot about the guy. And it seems like, is he an Abraham Almonte type guy? I mean, he's in his mid-20s, right? He's 26 or something? I'm not sure about that either, but...
I think he may be a tiny bit older because he was a 4-year college guy, so I think he may be like 29, but he's only a second or third year player. He debuted in August of 13, so
okay.
He is still in the pre-arbitration era of his contract and everything. He's got just barely over 1 year service time. He's arbitration eligible in 18. He can't be a free agent for 5 more years, so he's under full team control. But you look at the limited, and really last year was the only play that he had. I mean, he played a handful of games in 13 and 14. He was a late season call-up, so those don't even count. Last year was, in all essentials, his rookie year. He played half a season, 88 games. He was kind of a split player, but in that half a season, he batted .275 or so, 8 home runs, 30 RBIs, got on base. I think his on-base percentage was like 33% or something like that. OPS about 740. I mean, to me, looking at a young guy, even though by age he's not young, I guess, because he's 29, but experience-wise, he's a very young player. I just see some potential there to perhaps develop into a good, if nothing else, develop into the next Mike Avila's type.
Right, yeah. And I think really going back to the Napoli signing, I, as much as anything else, I think this might give a little bit of a break to the front office, who up to now have been signing the Colin Cowgirls of the world and the Joey Butlers of the world, and really have had very little to show for any progress they've made in these winter meetings and off season, because Mike Napoli is the first guy they've signed now that anyone has ever heard of, and maybe even if it's a minor signing on a 1-year deal or whatever, it might take a little bit of heat off them. Hey, you're making some incremental progress at least.
I wonder how mad Mike Brandenberry is at this signing, because my next question is, does Mike Napoli just replace the $6 million David Murphy contract? Is he just the new $7 million man? That's Mike's favorite argument, is that the Indians cannot have $7 million guys. They have minimum contract guys and big money guys. They cannot have the middle range guys like David Murphy. And I wonder, is Mike Napoli just the new David Murphy? Although he does have more pop in the bat, that's for sure.
Yeah, although we don't know what he's going to do for average. Did you say he hit 250 last year? Because it would surprise me if it was that high.
That was a quick average. He hit 210 in Boston, and then hit 300 for the 40 games that he played. So I kind of just met in the middle at 245, 250.
Split the difference there. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I guess, you're looking for right-handed pop, and you sign some right-handed pop. So we'll find out what kind of defender he is. I don't really have an idea of what he is around first base. I don't think he has to be Vic Power, but then again, you can't have a guy that's hurting you over there, because the first baseman can make errors himself, and he can cause errors on your other infielders too by not scooping the ball.
Absolutely. I was checking his errors, and actually in the field. Now, granted, this is not the advanced metrics where people say the zone rating and all that, but just looking at his error numbers alone, he's been very solid. Last year, he had a handful of, I see what it is. They broke him down by position. While he really did play a wide variety of positions last year, in 2015, he played first base, DH, left field, right field. Yeah, he was definitely checking some stuff out. He played 11 games at right field, 11 games at left, 15 at first. Then with Boston, played 96 at first. So when he went to Texas, they were moving him all over. He was strictly first base DH for Boston last year. Error-wise in the field for Texas down the stretch, he just had one error, but that was only in 15 games at first. Seven total for the season. So he had 7 infield errors for the season in 111 games over at first base.
Yeah, not terrible, I guess. But yeah, you don't know anything about range and those kinds of things, and I'm not enough of a advanced stats guy to even interpret that for you. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they use them, especially to see if they have any plans to try him in the outfield.
Speaking of advanced stats, by the way, baseballreference.com, their projections for Mike Napoli for 2016, he'll be 34 years old. They project him to have about 415 at-bats. They look for him to have a 240 average. They say 18 home runs, 60 RBIs are the 2016 projections for Mike Napoli.
Well, I guess, on a team that's power-starved, 18 homers and 60 RBIs doesn't look too bad, especially for a guy that, might be only not a 100% full-time player.
Absolutely. Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland joining us. For those of you just tuning in, as we're about to hit the 2:30 mark, a little bit later than usual, but we're doing the thing. Talk some Browns, talk some Indians. This at least gives you something to chew on if you're an Indians fan as they make the signing here of Mike Napoli. And now, let me shift gears one more time on you, Dan. Let's talk a little Cavaliers. But before we get into the Cavaliers of today, I started the show talking about how, as a kid, Hot Rod Williams to me, because I was a child, and the name Hot Rod and the smile, and he had the square top hair, and he was one of the Cavs I loved the most. I just thought that was the cool nickname, and I mentioned how that team, there wasn't stars. It wasn't like a team built around it. It was, everybody was a star. They were just all good players, and it was such great teams. But man, Hot Rod Williams to me was one of my favorites on those teams. I'm one of those guys that always finds the guy that maybe is like not everybody's favorite, and that kind of becomes my guy. And that's definitely where I went with Hot Rod. I grew up thinking Hot Rod Williams. Matter of fact, I remember when I was so excited first time I could play on a video game. I'm a gamer, and first time they had a classic roster with Hot Rod on it. I'm like, yeah, Hot Rod Williams. I put him in the starting lineup. I'm like, hey man, this isn't 1988. I'm not keeping him on the bench. But anyways, one of my favorite players. So sad to see how cancer took another person so young, 53 years old.
Yeah, it was. Well, first of all, I don't know if you saw the Terry Pluto column just about 3 days before they announced Hot Rod had died.
Yes.
Pluto wrote a column about him, and Pluto apparently had called his agent, Mark Bartelstein, about something else, and just happened to be asking him about Hot Rod, and Bartelstein was aware that Hot Rod was in bad shape, and, told Pluto, hey, it's bad, it's really, really bad. And so it wasn't surprising 3 days later. I kind of was surprised how quickly after that column came out that we got the news about Hot Rod. But, yeah, everybody liked the guy, and of course he was NBA Sixth Man of the Year, I believe, at least one time, and just supplied everything you wanted coming off the bench. He could score, he could rebound, he was a shot blocker, and most people remember sort of the story of him coming out of college in Tulane and a little bit of a scandal there, but he was a guy who I've always worked in the West Akron area, Fair Lawn, West Akron, and Hot Rod used to live right on Revere Road, a couple blocks off of Gentry, a little bit east of there, and it was a road that I would drive down all the time to and from the office. And Hot Rod had a house right there, and I would see him, go walking up to the mailbox periodically, and he was a real friendly guy, and everybody would wave to him, and he was always real gregarious and waving to people, and everybody knew where he lived, and I would see him, 3-4 times a year, just going out to get his mail or working out in his front yard or whatever. But yeah, a good guy, and obviously 53 is way too young. But I understand it was started out prostate cancer and went from there. But and they say too that Hot Rod was really beloved in his native Louisiana. He was still a guy that everybody looked up to, and he was very visible in the community, and just a super popular guy around the state of Louisiana. So yeah, way too young for a guy like that to go, and lots of great memories from those 80s Cavs teams.
For sure. I mean, and again, maybe I'm closer to him just like the Browns of that era because it's your team of your childhood, but I'm just in love with that Cavs team from, whatever, 85, 86, whenever it started until 94. Basically, when they went to the Q, that was pretty much when that team had played out its run, and then they started to make the switch into the newer teams. But even with going to the finals and LeBron and the new Cavs here and being championship contenders, none of it, I don't love any of it as much. I have a love for that Cavaliers team. That team taught me how basketball should be played. So even today, I think I look back to those Cavs and compare everything, man, because to me, those were just some great teams, some fun teams, and, man, they will always have a spot with me for the rest of my life.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. In fact, the year that they drafted Doherty and Harper and Price all in the same draft.
That was 86.
I actually went down to the draft at draft party downtown at can't remember if it was at the arena or where it was, but going down to watch that because there was so much excitement about the Cavs having the first pick. Then they ended up getting the pick to draft Harper with, and then end up making the trade for Price, which I believe was the first pick of the second round. It was just an incredible energy boost for the city and obviously for the franchise, and we didn't even know then how good that team would eventually look when they all came together.
Yep. damn you, Michael Jordan. If he hadn't come along at just the same time, man, that team would be even more loved because they would have won something, man. I remember, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. It was in 1990 when Magic Johnson said the Cavs were the team of the future. I'm like, hey, that man knows. That man knows. See what he said? Cavs, team of the future. Damn, Michael Jordan had to screw the whole thing up.
Yeah, I had to have his career right in the middle of that.
I mean, how selfish. He couldn't have had his career in the 70s or the 90s. He had to come along during the one era that the Cavs were set to take care of. It's like, John Elway comes along, right? I mean, what is it with these guys, man? Riding their black horse and their black cowboy hat in and just
lot of nerve, man. How did you feel about our boys taking the Celtics down a peg last night?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was sweet to watch, wasn't it?
Yeah, let's shift into today's Cavs because they're rolling here. And last night, Cavs took care of business, and they've won a couple in a row after that little blip in the radar. Shumpert comes off the court. Update, if you haven't heard, it's a injured groin, expected to be minor. He will miss the next game, maybe two, hopefully not much more than that. And then Kyrie not going to return here. Rumors got wild that he was going to come back out for OKC, but it looks like it'll be perhaps another game or two. They were talking about Christmas all season long, so it wouldn't surprise me if that's not the Christmas present to the fans is the return of Kyrie there against Golden State. But, yeah, man, the Cavaliers, and that's something, man. Forget home team and people saying Cavs this, that, if they're from Cleveland. Being real. They're still waiting to get Kyrie back. You Shumpert, you get him for 2 games, he's back out. I mean, the depth of this team really speaks to where they are right now, one of the top teams in the league, and still missing guys, and the luxury of being able to say, hey, take your time, get back right. This stuff will play dividends in the back end of this season.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. And to me, the thing of it is, like last night, this is a team that have been scoring 100 and some points a game for the last several weeks, and they were able to put up 77 on the Cavs last night, 31 in the second half. They just came out and clamped down on them, and this team's going to win with defense. That's LeBron's mantra, and it was a matter last night of LeBron just absolutely taking control and saying, no way is this going to happen. You guys aren't ready to play with us just yet. And that was the message in the second half. LeBron on both ends and the whole team on the defensive side. They were just they just clamped down on these Celtics, and they just don't have enough scoring to hang with this Cavs team right now.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. 2 minutes into the second half, it was 50-45 Cavs. And from that point on, the Celtics scored 23 points the rest of the way, or whatever it was, 27 points. Regardless, they were shut down. 15 points in the third quarter, 16 points in the fourth quarter, and the Cavaliers just defensively had their way. And that's what I love. I mean, yeah, it's nice to see highlight dunks and all that if you're into that thing. That doesn't do nothing for me outside of a quick pop. I like to see him win on defense and rebounding and grinding it out. Speaking of the boards, good to see Mozgov get going. He really picked it up. Third quarter was Mozgov's quarter. He ended up with a first double-digit rebound game of the season, but he had 7 points and 5 boards in the third quarter, and he was really big in that swing where the Cavs took control.
Yeah, and the game was on the offensive end. It was one in the paint because it was just obvious the Celtics had no answer for either Love or Mozgov or Tristan or whatever. They just, I think it was 44 to 20 some, points in the paint, and that was right from the get-go, right from the start of the game when they just started getting the ball to Love down low. Yep. And Mozgov came a little bit later on in the game, but it was obviously a plan and a strategy to pound it down low, and just knowing that the Celtics really had nobody down there to stop you.
Yep, and the Cavaliers, they went to town. From that point, when I mentioned earlier, it was 9.5 minutes left. It was 50-45. The Cavs were trailing. They went on a 17-2 run out of that timeout there, took control of the game, and just as you said, rolled it away. And that's what you want to see. That's the definition of this team that we fell in love with in the playoffs, and then when you play that way, when your defense, when you're playing inside out, when you're playing strictly 100% focused on the defensive side of the ball, That's why the Cavs had the run they did in the playoffs last year. When your team plays like that, you can lose guys. I'm not trying to say you can lose stars left and right, but the Cavs showed last year that they were able to weather those because it was next man up and they were playing defense, team defense, and when they do that's when this team becomes hard to beat. Everybody focuses on the stars and Kyrie and LeBron and all that stuff, but when this team plays defense like that, that's how they can lose 2 or 3 starters and still make it to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, no doubt. You're giving up 77 points. That means you can have a bad offensive night and still win the ball game. And they didn't necessarily have one of those nights last night. But the sweet thing is, going into Boston, where they're so full of themselves 100% of the time, they're even more full of themselves this year because they actually think they're good. And there was all this, smart talk and tough talk, I should say, before the game about it's going to be physical and Kelly Olynyk and this and that, and trying to make more of the incidents that happened last year with JR and of course with Kevin Love.
Crowder, yeah.
And we win the game in a walk, and basically, we're on your home floor, we're beating you by a dozen, we're winning the game going away. You're not even in it in the fourth quarter, so shut up.
What?
That's the thing I love about it, and it was basically LeBron just taking charge, in the second half, and obviously like we said, team defense, but essentially it was LeBron taking over and just saying, no way, this game's not going to be close, and so why don't you guys just shut up and we'll see you in May.
And that's a message because
whatever it is. I think it's the only time we go to Boston this year, so it's great to make that statement.
Well, more than just going there for one more game, I actually think the Celtics are very likely the Cavaliers' first-round opponent in the playoffs here coming up again this year. If it ended right now, they'd be the 7th seed, but it's a half-a-game deal, and obviously we're still only a quarter of the way through the season, but I actually think that's a very real possibility. So don't discount that there was a statement made in general to get in these guys' heads and let them know that ain't nothing changing if we do this in the playoffs again next year. It will be another 4-game sweep on you guys because you are not ready to play Cavaliers basketball just yet.
That's true, and I think Kevin Love and everybody on the team sort of made sure that the message was delivered that this isn't about Kelly Olynyk ripping my shoulder out of the socket last summer. This is about we're coming in here and we have a road game we have to win. And that's what we hope to do, and that's what they went out and did, and they didn't make a big deal out of it, and Crowder and LeBron had a little bit of physical play going on back and forth, but that's just a regular NBA game. So it wasn't the Cavs making a big deal out of it, and to a certain degree it was the Celtics and the Boston media that wanted to make it some kind of a test of manhood last night. Instead, it was just, Cavs got a road game to win, and we'll see who wins it, and they went out and took care of it.
Tell you what, something interesting. You and I have talked, you mentioned the West and the East a couple of times in our last few conversations, and just looking at the standings here in the West, there's only 6 teams with 14 or more wins in the West. There are 10 teams at 14 or more wins in the East, which flies in the face of that popular wisdom that the West is so much stronger. And at the top, I believe it is, because at the top, you've got Golden State, San Antonio, who everybody is sleeping on. While Golden State is 24-1 and they had the big streak to start the season, I still think the biggest threat to them is San Antonio knocking them off in the playoffs. And the Spurs are 21-5, and they're just quietly learning how to play with LaMarcus Aldridge and him getting into that system. And I still think that I still say Spurs and the Cavs in the finals, even though it's easy to go Warriors and Cavs in the finals. I think the Spurs got something for you, though. But look at that, man. I mean, you've got 10 teams over there in the East at 14 wins or more.
Yeah, now, do you happen to know what the head-to-head record is right now, West versus East? I don't know if that's something
but
that
I
you
can
have
probably find it out. If you keep talking, I can probably find out.
I think you're right, though, because here you go. The Warriors have had this historic streak, and they turn around and they're up 4 games on the Spurs. After all that, they've got only a 4-game lead on the Spurs, and you got to be wondering what's up with that. But,
you want to hear something
interesting? Yeah, interesting how that's playing out.
While we're talking about interesting numbers, and this is just, hey, take it for what it's worth. I got some splits on these numbers. I don't have the conference split yet, but they've got the teams' wins split between wins against teams over 500 and below. And I'm going through the West, and these numbers just stick out at me. In the wins versus teams below 500, Golden State 13-1, San Antonio 13-2, Oklahoma City 10-2, Clippers 10-2, Mavericks 12-4. All of these teams in the East with double-digit wins against under 500 teams. There's only one team in the East that has double-digit wins in their record over 500 teams, and that's the Orlando Magic. The Cavaliers are 8-3 against 500 teams this season, for reference sake. But there are no teams except Orlando in the East. So, in all honesty, the teams in the West are feasting on the sub-500 competition this year, not the teams in the East.
Yeah, that's interesting. Don't know how that, obviously plays out long term, but I think we are proving that there is definitely more balance this year than there has been in past years, because there was no doubt the last several seasons that the West was stronger top to bottom. And I just don't think you can make that categorical statement anymore, at least based on the first 30% of the season.
Here, let me give you some records. I don't have the aggregate totals, but here's the Eastern Conference, and I'll just use the playoff teams. We'll use the top 8 from each side. Against the West, the Cavs are 3-1. The Bulls are 7-3. The Raptors are 7-6. The Hornets are 5-2. The Pacers are 3-5. Miami is 7-1 against the Western Conference. The Celtics are 4-4, and then there's 3 more teams, Orlando, Detroit, and Atlanta, with 7 wins against the Western Conference. Now, when you go to the West, listen to the difference in these records. In the West, Golden State 9-1 against the East. San Antonio 10-3. The only teams with winning records against the Eastern Conference. Oklahoma City is 6-6. Clippers are 5-3. The Mavericks are 4-4. The Grizzlies are 4-5. The Rockets are 4-6, and so on and so forth. Every team 500 or less against the East from the West, with the exception of the top 2, and the other way around. Every playoff team in the East is 500 or better against the West.
Yeah, and I think it's not like we're looking at, a week's worth of games or whatever. I think it's a significant portion of the season where you can actually start to say, okay, this is a trend as opposed to some kind of an anomaly.
You're listening to the Sports Fix. Those of you just tuning in, Dan Wismar, J-Rocc, wrapping up a spirited conversation about the Browns, the Indians, the Cavaliers, and the Cavaliers now, as we mentioned, off of that victory, getting ready to host the Oklahoma City Thunder. It will be without Kyrie, but it should be a good one here. Talk about the East and the West. That is 2 of the top teams there meeting up at the Q. Oklahoma City comes in, 16-8 on the early start of the season, and of course, Westbrook and Durant, one heck of a 2-man combination, so that should be a good test with or without Kyrie.
Yeah, no kidding. I would say, and with apologies to LeBron people, and of course LeBron a little bit in a class by himself, but I think there's an argument to be made that Russell Westbrook's the best player in the NBA. I just, the last season and so far what he's done this year, I don't know that there's any player in the whole league that's better than that guy as far as, everything he does end to end. I'm amazed. I wish I could watch him more often. Because he's just an incredible basketball player. You're going to go down there, at the very least, down there at the Q this week, you can see the 2 best players in the NBA, let's put it that way.
That is for sure, and that's, what is it, twice a year? So, this is the one time that they come to the Q. Should be a good one there, and I'll be interested to watch that one as well. We're, a quarter of the way through the season? Let's see, 23 games or so just short of, or just above the quarter pole mark. Cavaliers sit at 16-7. I'm curious at this point last year, I want to say that their record was close to where it is. I know that through 18 games they were a hair below 500, but I want to say this may even be the exact record that they had through 23 games last year. It's relatively close.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I know that, the number that everybody talks about is 19-20 after 39 games. And so they obviously, I don't think they were this many games over 500 at any time in the first half last year.
No, I think you're right. They had, I think, their high water mark before the bottom fell out on that losing streak. I want to say they were maybe like 16-13. And
that sounds about right.
Yeah, and then they went through, like you said, that run where they went 3-7 through 10 games, and that's where they got to the 19-20. So keeping pace at least. I'm kind of interested in that as well, just for comparison's sake, even though each year leads into the next. So should be a lot of fun here this weekend. Cavaliers, couple of games to watch. I mean, obviously the Browns and the Seattle Seahawks. That should be a lot of fun. And
yeah, well, at the very going in with some low expectations at least this Sunday, and hopefully they can show up and give a good accounting of themselves. No, I don't think anyone's predicting a victory, but you just hope that you can see some reasons to think the glass is half full. That's all we're looking for. Low bar to get over.
Couple of quick news hits on the way out the door. We always talk Buckeyes, Big Ten football, Wisconsin. Bo Ryan out, retiring effective immediately. Craig Gard is going to step in as the coach there for Wisconsin, basketball-wise, excuse me. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
I mean,
it was
that's
a little bit surprising
decision.
that he did it right now. Some people are speculating that he did it more for the benefit of his assistant coach to make sure that the assistant ended up being in the job full time. I don't know about that. It's also he lost everything after last season. His team's off to a very bad start. So I guess it's a little bit of a I don't know. I don't want to say anything's cowardly. The guy's had a great career. But they're kind of ducking out on his team in the middle of the season, in the middle of what looks like it's going to be a pretty bleak record and season for the Badgers. Little bit, eyebrow raising, let's put it that way. But the guy's had such a great career that it's hard to begrudge him leaving when he feels like he wants to leave.
And you know what? That's an interesting point there too, about perhaps enabling at least for Gard to get a lengthy run as the interim coach to at least guarantee him to put his best foot forward towards having the job full time. Right.
That's I guess the idea. At least I've seen that theory floated this morning by some people.
Which makes sense. That's something interesting to see. As you said, it wasn't going to be the prettiest experience there, no matter what. But thought I would ask you about that. Kind of quiet on the Buckeye front, with the exception. That's right. You and I haven't been on the air about Adolphus Washington. He will not be a part of the Buckeyes' near future, and perhaps any future, as there are some people speculating that he may find his way out of college altogether after this. But what's the latest you've heard on the deal with him? Was it soliciting prostitution?
Well, it's not so much that I've heard anything other people haven't heard. But first of all, I think it was a foregone conclusion that Adolphus Washington was going to go into the draft even before this incident. He's a low first to second round draft choice right now, and I don't think this situation will necessarily hurt him like maybe a drug thing or a DUI thing or something else would have. The other thing that might be good to remember is that I believe that his court date is coming up today, tomorrow, sometime in the December teens. I had heard that he was going to have his case adjudicated here, I believe, this week. And if that's the case, and if he is given some kind of a community service or probation or some kind of a slap on the wrist kind of punishment for this thing, which is admittedly a misdemeanor, that there could be a change in his status for the Fiesta Bowl. That's possible, I guess, that he could be reinstated by Meyer before the game. Certainly, there's enough time between now and the game for him to potentially be reinstated if his court case is heard, and maybe charges are reduced, or maybe the penalties are incidental enough that Meyer will see his way clear to let Adolphus play one more game as a Buckeye.
Huh. Well, that's something maybe we'll revisit here when we talk on Monday. And as we're wrapping up, we talked about Mike Napoli with the Tribe, and the final details coming in here. Todd Frazier, a lot of people had talked about the Indians being in trade talks. Clearly, those talks were real, and Cincinnati wasn't playing, as they did make the deal. It's a 3-team trade. We referred to it earlier in the show. Details in Todd Frazier going to Chicago, which is the anti-Indians there, and perhaps that's what stirred that. Maybe hearing that the Indians were we're deep in that conversation. Here jumps in Chicago. 7-player trade, Chicago, Cincinnati, and the Dodgers. Todd Frazier, the all-star third baseman, is going to head over to Chi-Town to play for the White Sox. There's a lot of prospects and players involved that are switching between the teams, but the big one is Frazier. And what's interesting is Brett Lowry was another guy who was rumored, and I mentioned that I was slightly intrigued by him of coming to the Indians. He was signed by the White Sox a week or two ago, and now, boom, here comes Frazier. Apparently the White Sox are cutting the Indians off at the pass here, not to use a bad pun.
Yeah, that's a little distressing to see. The White Sox had a lot of ground to make up on the rest of the division, though, and but Lowry and Frazier too, both the guys obviously that were of interest to us, and they obviously were more serious or willing to part with more, but they've got their problems are on the pitching mound, I think, more than around the position players. So we'll see what impact those guys have on the White Sox.
Here's an interesting side note. I know a lot of the names in that trade nobody will recognize. I saw that there were a lot of the top 5 to 15 prospects from the various organizations. But one of the guys in the trade, Trace Thompson, who goes from the White Sox to the Dodgers, he is the brother of Klay Thompson from the Golden State Warriors. So that's an interesting connection there, and he's
and both sons of the great Michael Thompson.
Oh, of course, absolutely. So, man, that's right. When it's in the genes, it's in the genes, man. It doesn't matter.
That's right.
The Currys, the Thompsons, it doesn't matter what you do, man. What happened to Patrick Ewing Jr.? I don't know. I'm just kidding. I always joke that the ones that go wrong are the ones that get the exact name. They're the ones that have. I think that's the worst curse that you can give. Even though it's meant to be a good thing when you give them your name, that's the worst curse you can give is when you're famous and then they've got to live up to that and they have your name. Like Michael Jordan Jr. doesn't stand a chance, you know? Patrick Ewing Jr. doesn't stand a chance because even if you're great, you're always going to be compared to the greatest.
That's true, and then the same thing for guys that aren't related but they have the same name. There's a kid coming into Ohio State to play offensive tackle next year by the name of Michael Jordan.
Yes.
That's one of those things where if you're not related, then you don't even have the genes to back it up.
Absolutely. I felt bad. Michael Jordan's son was trying to play basketball, and he was getting signed by semi-pro teams, and you know that it's the name value. It's like, man, even if and he could play a little basketball, but it doesn't matter. Your name is Michael Jordan. People expect you to stick your tongue out and fly from the foul line, man, and unfortunately, there's only one man that can do that, and that's your dad. So, anyways, Dan, great stuff. Glad we were able to catch up. Let's do this on Monday. We'll have a Browns game to talk about. We'll see if the Indians do anything else. We'll see how the Cavaliers do. We got a lot to get into, man.
That sounds good, Jerry. Look forward to being with you Monday. It's always fun.
You got it. My man, Dan Wismar. Late is better than never, especially when it's getting Dan Wismar in on the show. And thank you guys as well. Speaking of late, look at what time it is. This was a long one, but hell, it's been 10 days since we've been in here. We had a lot of ground to cover and a lot more to do when we come back on Friday. We'll try to get Jonathan Knight in with us. We'll get Mike Brandenberry in. We'll talk about Mike Napoli with him, the Todd Frazier trade. We'll see what he thinks about the latest with the Indians, the White Sox gaining ground on the division. Mike Brandenberry from DidTheTribeWinLastNight.com. We'll get BJ Rodella in its Fantasy Football for Winners Playoff Edition. And speaking of, congratulations to everybody who played in the Sports Fix Fantasy Football Challenge this year. The league has now reached playoffs, and it starts this weekend. The top 6 teams have advanced. The winner is going to get that beautiful championship title belt from our good friends at FantasyJocks.com. As my phone just started flashing up on me, I was looking to bring up the fantasy brackets. The top 2 seeds, Cleveland Kate. Tell you what, when you're the first to do something, it always helps to do it in record-breaking fashion. Cleveland Kate the first female entrant into the... No, I'm sorry. Betty was in a couple years ago, but it's been a while. But anyways, first female in a while to join the group. Number 1 seed, best record of the season, Cleveland Kate. Number 2 seed, my man Charles Morgan, as he is the second best team. Both of them 11 and 10 wins, I believe, on the season. Whole bunch of us all tied for the next 4 spots underneath. I made the playoffs as well. I have my son, little Jerry, who also made the playoffs in the first round. We have 2 first-round matchups. Justin Beavers, congratulations. He is on the other side against my man Jersey Dog, Scott Gioni from New Jersey. He's in there as well. Where was the Wood? The Morning Wood team actually finished just outside the playoffs. 7th or 8th, I believe, just missed the cut in the playoffs. Anyways, top 6 teams begin play this weekend. 1 and 2 get a bye into the semifinals. So let's see if I can knock off my son. We'll find out. This weekend, though, playoffs begin. For most of you guys, it's either begun or it keeps going. In my other leagues, I am out of the playoffs. On the outside looking in, playing those meaningless games that don't really mean anything, but you have to set your roster spots to be fair to everybody else. So, should be some fun. 3 weeks from now, there will be a winner of the Sports Fix Fantasy Football Challenge. 1 of 6 chance for these guys: Charles, Kate, Jerry, Justin, Scott. One of those 6 names is going to get to win the trophy. We'll talk about that Friday as well. Should be fun, you guys, as we continue to roll on. Congrats to all 6 teams that made the playoffs. Remember, if you didn't make it or you didn't play, we do it again next year. And you know what? I'm thinking about jumping into fantasy basketball as well, as that's a new developing thing that a lot of people are starting to get into. We'll talk about it more. We'll talk about all of this and wrap up the week Friday. Same bad time, same bad channel, live at noon right here, baby, across the Sports Fix Radio Network. We love you, Cleveland and beyond, and we'll see you Friday, noon, right here on the Sports Fix.